No, I didn't find anything, Ren Feiyu closed his eyes and replied plainly. No one could see the jealous and hateful look in Ren Feiyu's eyes. It was just like before when the first marshal only cared about Ling Xiao. The previous chief of the Flying Dragon Special Forces also saw Ling Xiao as the next in line to take his position. In the end, Ling Xiao didn't want it, so the chief gave it to Ren Feiyu instead. Everyone only had Ling Xiao in their eyes. Even if he performed well, even if they were praising him, these people would still add in the last few words at the end of their sentence, of course, it's not comparable to Ling Xiao's records. He didn't know when it started, but Ling Xiao became someone he mentally couldn't surpass. If Ling Xiao was alive, he would feel suffocated every single day. 20 years ago, he finally managed to plot against Ling Xiao and killed him. During those years, he was able to sleep at peace and climb to the position he wanted. However, Ling Xiao actually returned alive, and everyone's gaze fell upon him once again. The first marshal, who was planning on developing Ren Feiyu to be the next marshal, gazed upon Ling Xiao favorably again. If it wasn't for the fact that he had done so much for the first marshal, perhaps he would have been abandoned long ago. Thus, Ling Xiao must die. This time, however, he was definitely going to see it for himself. In the end, he got what he wanted. The news of Monarch Fury and Ling Xiao dying of mutual destruction was instantly known throughout the entire galaxy. Caesar was shocked. Twilight was terrified. The Federation was in sorrow. Many clans didn't even dare to think about going against military orders and began moving out to attack Twilight. In a short amount of time, all the borders of the Twilight Empire became battlefields. Caesar, who Twilight put all their hopes in, slowly withdrew back to their own territory after losing Monarch Fury. They didn't dare to make any further moves. Without a profound god-class individual holding the fort, they must first find a way to resolve the conflict between them and the Federation. It should be known that the Federation still had another profound god-class individual. Even if his strength had deteriorated and that he wouldn't be able to continue to live for many years, as long as he was alive, Caesar must bow their head down and regard themselves as servants to the Federation. They had to wait until that person passed on from this world before restarting their campaign. Twilight, who was abandoned by Caesar, no longer had any allies to reinforce them. What awaited them was the destruction of their nation. Of course, they weren't the only ones being destroyed. There was also their allied nation, the Aran Alliance. Just one Twilight Empire was not enough to quell the anger of the citizens and soldiers of the Federation. The Aran Alliance, who fought alongside the Twilight Empire, was the best target for letting out their anger. Many soldiers and citizens actually wanted to start a war with Caesar. However, the three marshals and the military headquarters knew that the Federation only looked strong on the outside. In reality, they were just a paper tiger. The profound god-class individual, Supreme Dragon, could only be used as a deterrence. If he were to actually fight and activate his profound god state, he would probably reach his limit after the war and die. After thinking about all that, the three of them all regretted the arrangements they had made for Ling Xiao. Although Ling Xiao took Monarch Fury down with him, causing a huge blow towards Caesar, a living profound god state individual was still more useful than a dead one. It should be known that although Monarch Fury could fight, everyone knew he only had at most 20 to 30 years left to live. After 20 or so years, he would be like Supreme Dragon, who was retired and was basically waiting for death to come. However, Ling Xiao was different. He was still so young. At least, for the next 150 years, he would be able to stay at his peak. If he preserved himself, it was possible for him to suppress the other nations for 200 years. 100 years was already multiple generations to grow, not to mention 200 years. This amount of time was enough for the Federation to increase both its political and military power, and stand above all nations. As the war progressed, more and more of the Twilight Empire's planets were put under the Federation's control. The victory was within their grasp. The few god-class operators who had participated in the battle all began to return home. Ren Feiyu also used this chance to return silently. That was because his god-class operator level was not publicized, so he could only mix in with the other god-class operators. "Chief, you're back." Right as Ren Feiyu returned to his quarters, his deputy had been there waiting for him. "Wait outside. I need to go to the training room to make sense of something." "Notify everyone to not disturb me," ordered Ren Feiyu plainly. "Yes, Chief," said the deputy respectfully. Ren Feiyu then went directly to the training room. He carefully closed the door of the room and also turned off the surveillance cameras at the same time. After knowing he was no longer being watched, he breathed a sigh of relief and sat cross-legged on one of the mats. Duplication talent. The talent I have always dreamed of. It's finally mine. Ren Feiyu's face was full of excitement. He used so much effort in order to acquire Ling Zhao's innate talent. In the end, he had finally succeeded. However, he almost gave his identity away because of it. If it wasn't for the fact he knew the first marshal well, he might actually have been caught by that sly old fox. Ren Feiyu used his spiritual power to softly push on the device in his mindscape. "Would you like to activate the newly acquired talent?" said a robotic voice. This thing was something he suddenly acquired when he was just a young boy. He didn't know what it actually was. Back then, he only felt his head hurt after falling unconscious for a few days. He was clueless about what it was until one day, when he accidentally encountered someone who had just died. This device suddenly spoke up and asked whether he would like to record a newly found energy innate talent. He was curious about its function, so he said he needed it. Then, the device asked him whether he would like to activate it. After succumbing to his curiosity, he fell unconscious again. In the end, he was taken to his parents by the police. They all thought he fell unconscious out of fright after seeing a dead person. Only he knew the real reason why he fainted that day. From that day onwards, he acquired his first innate talent. It was a very useless talent. He had already forgotten what it was. It couldn't be helped as he could only develop one innate talent at a time. Those who had two innate talents would never become commoners. Ren Feiyu, of course, wanted to continue to be a commoner in the eyes of the public, as in doing so, he would attract less attention and less hatred. Thus, after acquiring a better innate talent, he would erase the previous innate talent, slowly growing stronger as time went by. Ren Feiyu held back the feeling of euphoria coursing through his vein. He closed his eyes and forced himself to calm down. Although this device was very beneficial for him, it was still painful whenever he activated the innate talent. The pain coming from the activation of the innate talent couldn't be avoided. If he wanted to perfectly use the newly acquired innate talent, his body must be modified to accommodate the innate talent. The pain was truly unbearable. It was as if every inch of your body was slowly peeled away. However, in order to become stronger, Ren Feiyu wasn't afraid of some pain, but still, calming himself down would allow him to endure more pain. He didn't want to fall unconscious halfway in, just like he did in the AST. Back then he didn't know about the implications of falling consciousness, but after he did some research, he discovered that the results of activating the innate talents while awake was different from when he was unconscious. When he was awake, the quality of innate talent was higher and the innate talent was more likely to revert to its original state. Being unconscious would lower the quality of the innate talent, and at most he could only obtain half of what it originally was. It was fine for other innate talents, but he couldn't let Ling Zhao's duplication innate talent go to waste. Something he acquired from years of hard work must be reverted close to 100%. After feeling he was ready, Ren Feiyu calmly said, "Activate." After saying those words, a terrifying yet familiar pain writhed throughout his body. Ren Feiyu couldn't control himself and began to scream out in agony. His entire face was twisted as if he was being possessed. After enduring for only a few minutes, Ren Feiyu suddenly had a terrified expression on his face. "What is this? This isn't the duplication talent." "Ah!" He suddenly cried out in agony. His entire body fell onto the floor, and after a few seconds, he went unconscious. After 4 hours, Ren Feiyu slowly opened his eyes and sat up. A seemingly demonic smirk appeared on his face. "Ren Feiyu. My things are not for you to take." Ren Feiyu's demonic smirk slowly turned to a mocking expression. "The entire world knows that I have the duplication talent. How could they know that I am actually a double innate talent individual? I never told anyone about the second innate talent, not because I didn't want to tell people, but because I couldn't tell them. The devour innate talent can devour all that exists. That includes your consciousness, Ren Feiyu. TSK, you really are unlucky. You didn't get my duplication innate talent but instead acquired my devour innate talent. After plotting against me for so long. Ha! Now devouring your consciousness shall be the price you pay for plotting against me." Ling Xiao let out a devilish smile. "First Marshal, I've said it before. Don't let me come back alive. Once I come back alive, we will slowly settle all our differences. If you don't want me to be on your side, then I just be the antagonist of this story. The games from now will be interesting. Just you wait and see." Ling Xiao slowly restrained his demonic smile. His entire expression turned as cold as ice. Without the duplication innate talent to balance him out and with the Devourer innate talent as his main talent, Ling Xiao's aura was very demonic. Even if he had the face of Ling Xiao, just this demonic aura was enough to make Ling Lan not acknowledge that this person was her warm and kind-hearted father. Ling Lan slowly awakened. She was still inside her mecha. The mecha's display screen was blocked by a large mecha's body. Ling Lan didn't need to ask any question as she knew it was definitely Li Lanfeng's mecha on top of her. She didn't try and move away as tears slowly dropped from her eyes. She hated crying as she believed it was a sign of weakness. However, now, she couldn't hold back the sadness in her heart. Tears came down her cheeks uncontrollably. It turns out, back then, it wasn't because she was strong-willed, but rather she just wasn't sad enough. If it was possible, she would rather have her father never return. That way, she wouldn't have had to endure such heartbreaking pain. It was pain that entered directly into the heart. Ling Lan hated herself. If she was just a bit stronger, if she was a God-class operator, a profound God-class operator, would her father not have given up his life to protect her? Caesar, Twilight and the Federation. I won't let any of you go. Ling Lan screamed out angrily in her mind. Ling Lan, don't be sad. The general won't die. He won't die. He's a bird that won't die. He's a phoenix. He will definitely be reborn from the ashes. He will return, just like back then. Slowly, Ling Lan began to hear these words. It was Li Lanfeng. Ling Lan, don't be sad. The general won't die. He won't die. He's a phoenix. He will definitely be reborn from the ashes. He will return, just like back then. Li Lanfeng continued to repeat the same words over again. His voice had already become hoarse and was somewhat trembling. However, even though his voice was like that, he still continued to repeat those words. He wanted to provide any semblance of comfort to Ling Lan. He wanted Ling Lan to regain her composure and continue to be motivated to live. At that moment, Li Lanfeng didn't know what to do or say to comfort Ling Lan. He could only repeat those words as those words gave him confidence, so he hoped that it would also give Ling Lan confidence too. He knew the importance of General Ling Xiao to Ling Lan. Ling Lan wasn't like him. He was a truly cold, heartless and selfish person, but Ling Lan was someone who put feelings first. Despite Ling Lan behaving coldly and heartlessly, he knew Ling Lan's softer side. He knew Ling Lan's real personality. That personality made him adore Ling Lan. It was because he couldn't have that type of emotion. Yes. My father's a bird that won't perish. He's a phoenix, Ling Lan said as she cried. She didn't believe that the man who loved her so much would be so heartless to leave her like that. She believed that as long as there was a slight possibility, her father would definitely return. That was because his loving wife, Lan Luofeng, and child, Ling Lan, were still alive. After hearing Ling Lan's reply, Li Lanfeng had a joyful expression on his face. He had been constantly repeating the same words for more than an hour while not hearing a single response from Ling Lan. Only God knew how worried he was. He was afraid Ling Lan couldn't take all of it at once. In addition to Ling Lan's previous injuries. Now that he heard Ling Lan's voice, Li Lanfeng felt alive again. That's right. When has the general ever disappointed us? We must believe in him. Ling Lan, you can't disappoint the general. Despite Li Lanfeng not knowing what Ling Xiao told Ling Lan at the very end, he still believed those words could motivate Ling Lan to continue living. That was why he emphasized it in hopes Ling Lan wouldn't forget about what the general had told him. In order for Ling Lan to have the motivation to continue living, Li Lanfeng used all the methods he could think of. He didn't care much about whether General Ling Xiao was dead or alive. He only cared about how much Ling Lan would hurt from this incident and if Ling Lan would continue to have the confidence to live. I know. I won't disappoint my father, Ling Lan said calmly. No matter what happened to her father, Ling Lan was not someone who depended on her father to live. She no longer wanted to watch the people she loved dearly fight for her or even sacrifice themselves for her. She hoped that could protect the people he loved with her own two hands. I was wrong in the past. I will change now and continue to become stronger. I only hope that one day God will give me another chance to protect that person who loves me and who I also love, thought Ling Lan as tears trickled down her face. I will become a king. The king of this world and not let anyone plot against me or the people I love. It was the first time Ling Lan had such an ambitious thought. After losing someone she cared about dearly, Ling Lan had an epiphany about life. Protecting those she loved couldn't be done just by saying it. She needed to do more. Abilities was one, followers was another, but there was also political power she now needed to take into account. Little Seven controlled Destruction Devil and led these saddened individuals away from the Twilight Empire, away from the Federation. They went towards a faraway place that even he didn't know where they were going. This was the final command his boss, Little Four, gave him. He couldn't find him anymore. Thus, he believed that he must complete what his boss had assigned him, even if it meant taking Ling Lan and betraying the Federation. Little Seven finally found a deserted satellite base to dock the Destruction Devil at. Little Seven carefully controlled the 7th bugle call and docked onto its port. Li Lanfeng saw the cargo doors to the main hull slowly opening, so he held on to Ling Lan's mecha and flew into the main part of the ship. On the other side of the tail area of the ship, Luo Lang also flew inside the ship. After finding the mecha hold to dock their mechas, Li Lanfeng crawled out his mecha with a bloody and battered body. Even with such heavy injuries, he didn't tend to his injuries but instead went directly to Ling Lan's mecha. He opened a latch near Ling Lan's cockpit, revealing a keypad that could manually open the cockpit from the outside. Li Lanfeng carefully keyed in the passcode for the cockpit to open. Stepping backward a few steps, Li Lanfeng saw Ling Lan lying inside there with blood and grime sticking all over her mecha suit. It would be difficult to get her out of mecha suit without injuring her any further. Having no choice, Li Lanfeng took a deep breath and grabbed a multipurpose knife he kept in his pocket. He concentrated his gaze and slowly cut open the suit inch by inch before carefully pulling Ling Lan out. This was his first time seeing Ling Lan so weak and fragile. Back when they were on planet Haijiao, he was commanding the battle in the base so didn't see what Ling Lan was like when she was sent to the medical department. Despite knowing Ling Lan was severely injured and being very worried about Ling Lan, he didn't see it for his own eyes so he didn't feel as much pain as he was feeling right now. If it was possible, he didn't want to see Ling Lan like how she was right now ever again. He liked to see the dominant Ling Lan standing before him, snorting coldly at him and smacking him down with one hit then saying, "Li Lanfeng, don't make me look down on you." That was the version of Ling Lan he loved and wanted to see. Even with turbulent emotions wrecking them internally, Li Lanfeng and Luo Lang slowly collected themselves as this starship was still unfamiliar territory so they were still not really safe. They quickly took out the medicinal agent they had pre-prepared in their mechas and fed them to Ling Lan. Right at that moment, a door connecting to the corridor of the ship suddenly opened. Major General Tian Fong was bringing medical personnel to the mecha hold. "How is Lieutenant General Ling doing?" Tian Fong asked worriedly. Although General Ling Xiao might have perished, his admiration for both Ling Lan and Ling Xiao had not diminished in the slightest. In reality, Tian Fong and Luo Yang already had some clues on how General Ling Xiao fell into this trap. If the Federation didn't secretly allow it, Caesar, Twilight and the Aran Alliance wouldn't have been able to send out this many God-class operators to the battlefield at the Twilight Empire. It was clear that this battle was clearly a plot against the general, and the Federation definitely had a hand in it. This undoubtedly hurt the love these soldiers had for their nation. Even if it was just a normal general, they still wouldn't be able to accept it, not to mention the person was the idol of all the soldiers, General Ling Xiao. It's no surprise, politics are disgusting and sinful. After being disappointed by the Federation, they accepted the fact that Little Seven had taken them away from the Federation. Otherwise, Little Seven would not have piloted the Destruction Devil out of the Federation without any obstruction. The reason why everyone on the 7th bugle call calmly accepted it was because Tian Fong and Luo Yang told everyone the reason behind leaving the Federation. Of course, it was also mostly due to the fact that most of the people on the 7th bugle call were part of Tian Fong's original crew. This was why Ling Xiao was confident in them. Tian Fong wasn't like other regiment commanders, who would be afraid of their subordinates separating themselves to factions and then losing control of them in the end. Ling Xiao was confident in his own capabilities and the strict regulations of the 23rd Division. Even if these starship commanders were to take their confidants with them and become factions on their own, they still would function as one during a war and fight bravely against the enemies of the Federation and the 23rd Division. Ling Xiao's way of doing things, along with the strict yet fair regulations, did indeed make all of the commanders in the 23rd Division loyal and happy at the same time. It was just like Tian Fong's 7th bugle call. Once their commander gave an order to fight, they would most definitely rush to the front lines. They wouldn't change their course just to protect themselves. After hearing Tian Fong's question, Li Lanfeng shook his head depressingly. "Our commander's condition isn't good. He is injured too severely. I have already prepared a surgery room for Lieutenant General Ling. I request Major General Li and Senior Colonel Luo to take him there," suggested Tian Fong. Right as Li Lanfeng and Luo Lang were about to nod in agreement, Ling Lan opened her eyes and said with a soft voice, "Unnecessary. Just give me a quiet room. I will treat my own wounds." "Commander, your wounds need immediate treatment." The veins on Li Lanfeng's forehead were popping. He held back his anger and spoke softly. "I know my wounds. I know how to treat myself better." Ling Lan stared at Li Lanfeng with a look of determination. Her gaze told Li Lanfeng to not go against her will. The two of them stared at each other for a few seconds. In the end, Li Lanfeng gave in and said, "All right. However, if things get worse, don't blame me for forcing you to get treatment." "Okay." Ling Lan knew she just needed to give Li Lanfeng a peace of mind. Otherwise, that guy would definitely use forceful methods. With her current condition, if he was to force her to do something, she wouldn't be able to do anything about it. What was more important was that she didn't want her identity as a female to be exposed before reaching the top of the food chain of the galaxy. Soon, Tian Fong had prepared a private room for Ling Lan. Li Lanfeng held Ling Lan in his arms and slowly laid her on a soft mat. The medic who followed them quickly put the bandages and treatment agents Ling Lan requested on the coffee table on her side. Li Lanfeng knelt halfway down beside Ling Lan and asked softly, "Do you need me to help you?" "I don't have any thoughts of marrying a male just yet." Ling Lan took the bandages and lowered her head towards Li Lanfeng and said indifferently, "I think you also don't want to get married to me." Li Lanfeng's mouth writhed as he swallowed the words, "I want to." At this current moment, in this current situation, it wasn't a suitable time for him to confess his feelings. Ling Lan was already injured badly, she should not be bothered by his emotions and should just concentrate on healing herself. Li Lanfeng was usually selfish, but that was only towards others. When it was Ling Lan, he would always let Ling Lan dictate everything. At that moment, Ling Lan needed time, rest and peace. Even if he wanted to tell Ling Lan about his feelings, he still needed to hold them in. He could only wait for Ling Lan to slowly recover from her injuries. Only after everything had returned to normal, would he consider confessing his feelings to Ling Lan. "All right. I'll be outside. If you need anything, just call me." After receiving a peace of mind, Li Lanfeng stood up, slowly walked towards the door of the room and closed the door. He leaned on the door and slid down to the floor slowly. Then he patiently waited for Ling Lan to call him. At that moment, Li Lanfeng had already forgotten that his injuries were not light either. Just holding Ling Lan tightly in his arms reopened the injuries on his body. After waiting in a daze for a short while, the place where he sat down had a pool of blood under him. Luckily, he could recover pretty quickly, so the blood gradually stopped flowing as his wounds began to heal. However, Li Lanfeng was not aware of what was happening to him. He was only focused on listening to the movements in the room behind him. As long as Ling Lan needed him, he would rush in at a moment's notice. Ling Lan slowly unzipped her clothes and took them off piece by piece. Her underwear was stuck on her wounds because the crusty and dried up blood. Separating them from her body was the same as opening all the wounds. However, this pain wasn't anything Ling Lan couldn't handle. "Little Four, did you ascertain that there's no surveillance equipment here?" Ling Lan was always careful, so she began to ask Little Four about the situation around her. However, Little Four, who usually loved to speak, didn't make any sound. "Little Four! Little Four!" Ling Lan shouted out in terror. However, her mindscape was completely empty. Little Four's annoying yet sharp voice was no longer there. Ling Lan anxiously used her spiritual power to try to enter the learning space. However, when she tried to enter it, she was rejected by it. Her spiritual power couldn't even get close to it. What is happening? Ling Lan's heart ached. Was she going to lose her little brother Little Four after just losing her father? "Little Four, Little Four, Little Four, answer me. Don't scare me like this. Little Four, answer me." Ling Lan cried out in agony in her mindscape. In the entire mindscape dimension, only her call for Little Four echoed within it. Other than that, there weren't any other sounds. Even Little Blossom didn't make any noise. Ling Lan then remembered Little Blossom. She immediately began to call out for him, Little Blossom, are you here? If you're here, please say something. I beg of you. Tell me where Little Four has gone to. Why isn't he coming out? Why isn't he here?" There was still no response. It was as though other than Ling Lan, there wasn't anyone that existed in her mindscape dimension. Little Four, why aren't you here? What are you?" Ling Lan couldn't understand what was happening because Little Four, who was always following beside her, had left without saying anything in advance. Suddenly, Ling Lan remembered that when she was still sad about her father leaving this world, her mindscape was in chaos, which caused her to go unconscious. Was that the reason why little Four had vanished? Ling Lan, now with a direction to go towards, began to scan her mindscape. She discovered that the usually lush and lively mindscape had begun to writhe and rot. Although it wasn't as serious as before, it was still quite bad. She actually neglected the odd situation in her mindscape because she was sad about her father. Something must have happened to little Four and the learning space. Ling Lan was anxious and frustrated, but she didn't know what to do to ease her frustration. Not being able to enter the learning space disallowed her from knowing little Four's situation. She was also unaware of Little Blossom and the 9 instructors' situations as well. In that instant, Ling Lan suddenly felt she was abandoned by the entire world. The father, who loved her dearly, was most likely dead. Her little brother, Little Four, who had always been following beside her since her birth, had disappeared as well. Moreover, Xie, who was always optimistic and loved to smile, had sacrificed himself to make sure they could get away from the profound God state energies safely. At that moment, Ling Lan could no longer control herself. She quickly covered her mouth. She was like a lonely little animal. She curled up in a fetal position and began to sob softly. Li Lanfeng, who had been paying attention to Ling Lan all this time, heard Ling Lan's soft sobbing. He put his hand on the door, but in the end, he helplessly put his hand down and continued to lean on the door instead. His heart was aching for the person he loved who was always tough and never cried. However, now that tough person was silently crying by himself. Li Lanfeng's tears were always used for a purpose, but today, he cried because he was sad. He was crying for that person who he truly loved. Ling Lan. I know that being so proud, you wouldn't want me to see you at your weakest. The me right now can't do anything even though I see you crying in such pain. Even a word of comfort would be seen as an insult to you. A useless me can only just cry with you. I really hope I can cry more for you. Hopefully, it will lessen the pain. 2 people, one outside the room and one inside. Both were crying. One was for herself and the other was for the person he loved. They had different feelings, but shared the same pain. At a place where neither of these two knew about, Luo Lang clenched the bracelet Xie had gifted him while also sobbing intensely. In the past, he didn't understand the feeling Xie had for him when he gave him the bracelet. He had even disliked him for it. However, now, he understood the reason, but he no longer had a chance to respond to the question Xie had asked him back then. The moment he was referring to was the time when they graduated from the military academy. At that time, Xie suddenly called him to hang out in a cafe. When he arrived at the cafe, Xie pushed a beautifully wrapped box to him. Luo Lang looked at the box with a suspicious gaze in his eyes as he asked in confusion, "What's this?" Was it one of those prank boxes? Xie always liked to pull pranks and make jokes, Luo Lang had to be on guard. Xie had a pained expression on his face as he said, "This is a graduation gift for you. Can't you just trust me?" "Well, who asked you to lose everyone's trust in the past few years?" Luo Lang pouted. If it wasn't because he was open-minded, Xie might have been disliked by everyone in the world, causing him to not have a single person play with him. Xie pretended he didn't hear those words and looked at Luo Lang with a smile, gesturing him to open the box and take a look. Although Xie loved to make jokes and pull pranks, the only person who he didn't prank other than Ling Lan, Xie didn't dare to prank Ling Lan, was Luo Lang in the past few years. Luo Lang trusted Xie wouldn't lie to him, so he opened the box with high expectation. After all, he was still quite happy that someone gave him a gift. After opening the box, he only saw a flat and common-looking bracelet. The color was green, which wasn't the color Luo Lang liked. It was rather close to the color of his skin. Luo Lang saw it and had a look of disdain on his face. "What's this? It doesn't look nice at all." Well, Luo Lang still liked those beautiful things. In Qi Long's words, he would be considered as someone who was focused on appearances. Xie was annoyed at Luo Lang's pure dismissal of his gift. "Luo Lang, don't judge a book by its cover." He quickly taught Luo Lang how to use the bracelet step by step. It turns out, the seemingly ordinary bracelet was not so ordinary. It was actually a weapon that could change into countless different forms. It could shoot out a grappling hook, taking a person up over a wall. There were also needles inside it that could be shot out. The most important part was that if he was in danger, he just needed to push down on the bracelet firmly. Then, Xie would be able to lock onto his location and arrive promptly. After hearing all this, Luo Lang was very annoyed. If I can't handle it, then what use would you be? It would be more useful to get boss. Alright. I'll stay and hold the enemy while you go find boss. Xie didn't get angry and only replied with a smile on his face. Perhaps that was the real thought in Xie's mind. Him going to Luo Lang was not to save Luo Lang, but rather it was to use his life in exchange for Luo Lang to have a chance to live. I don't want it. Wearing it will weigh me down and be a burden. Luo Lang didn't want to wear something that he deemed to be useless. Xie said sadly, this is something I ordered long ago. I spent a lot of money. If you don't want it, then the few months that I starved myself would all have been for nothing. What? Luo Lang didn't think Xie lived so frugally just because of this bracelet. Yeah. Our credits are all with boss. Plus, I didn't give our boss a present. If he knows that I only give you a present, I'll definitely die by his hand, said Xie with a terrified look on his face. Then, why don't you also give the others this present? Asked Luo Lang in confusion. They don't need it since they're all stronger than me. Xie shrugged with a helpless look on his face. You are implying I'm weak. I think you haven't beaten me yet. Luo Lang gritted his teeth angrily. Why did everyone think he was the weakest link even though he was the third strongest? Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Then what should I do? I ordered it to your size. No one else can wear it. It will be wasted if you reject it. Xie hugged his head with his hands. Seeing Xie's saddened expression, Luo Lang pitied him a bit. He looked at the bracelet and felt that just tossing it away was indeed quite wasteful. Thus, he helplessly said, forget it. Just give it to me. I'll just wear it as an accessory. Xie's eyes lit up at Luo Lang's answer. He immediately stood up, picked up the bracelet in Luo Lang's hands and carefully put it on Luo Lang's wrist. Right at that moment, Xie suddenly asked softly, Luo Lang, if someone who liked you gave you something like this and put it on for you, would you accept them? Luo Lang looked confused and asked, accept what? Xie laughed and sputtered, nothing. I was just asking for fun. After hearing Xie dismissing the question, Luo Lang didn't think much of it. In reality, Luo Lang was someone who didn't like to think too much. Unless his calm personality appeared, he would stay in a ditzy manner. Plus, the calm personality would definitely not help analyze Xie's feelings for the main personality. Xie, you bastard. Why do you not like women and like me instead? Even liking my little sister is better than liking me, Luo Lang said softly as he cried, I never thought about that kind of stuff. I only saw you as my best friend. I'm sorry. I can't give an answer right now. Even if I do, you wouldn't be able to hear it. If you have a chance to return alive, then maybe I will be willing to give you a chance. Luo Lang held the bracelet in his hands as he cried. I don't like men, but if it is you, I will be willing to give you that chance. Xie, did you hear that? You have to promise me that you will return alive and well. Prove to me that you love me. Luo Lang didn't know what he was saying anymore. It was just like when Xie gave up his life to give him a chance to live. He also wanted Xie to stay alive. Even thought he never had any thoughts about homosexuality, he would still be willing to try it out for Xie. As long as he could stay alive. Ling Tian Independent Army soon received word of General Ling Zhao's death and Ling Lan's disappearance. No matter if it was Lin Zhongqing and others who were on base Nebula, or Qi Long and the others protecting the transport convoy, they all felt as if they were all struck by lightning. I'm going to go look for boss. I will go find him. Qi Long didn't care about the many major generals in the transport convoy trying to stop him. He just took 2 destruction devils and left. He went straight towards the area where Ling Lan fell in the trap. At the same time, Base Nebula, which had just returned within the Federation's boundaries, also returned under Lin Zhongqing's command to the location where they last separated with Ling Lan. However, what they saw was all desolate debris. It was because the profound God-state energy's eruption had destroyed everything in this area of space. The bluish tint space also lost its color, becoming a dark gray color. Finally, the 2 sides met up. Qi Long commanded the 2 destruction devils to enter Base Nebula. He rushed into the command center and grabbed the collar of Lin Zhongqing as he shouted angrily, Why? Why didn't you stop him? Why did you make him fight a God-class operator all by himself? Why? Tell me why. Lin Zhongqing bit his lip and looked at Qi Long in silence. After Lin Zhongqing received confirmation that Ling Lan had disappeared, he had been blaming himself. If he had kept his eye on Boss, would he have been able to stop Boss from leaving the base? After thinking up to that point, he was full of regret. He hated himself for staying in the logistics department while Boss was in danger. Where is Li Lanfeng? Luo Lang? Xie? What are they doing? Why didn't they stop Boss? The Federation's headquarters only publicly announced Ling Xiao and Ling Lan's situation. Qi Long and the others still didn't know Li Lanfeng, Luo Lang and Xie Yi's situation. They disappeared together with Boss. We don't know what happened to them either. Li Jinghong saw Qi Long become increasingly angrier and Lin Zhongqing constantly blaming himself. Li Jinghong was afraid Qi Long might explode, so he immediately responded to his questions. And you know fully well we can't stop Boss. If he didn't leave, Base Nebula would definitely have been destroyed by that God-class operator. We would all die. Boss definitely wouldn't let something like that happen. We didn't have a choice, said Li Jinghong in a pained tone. No one wanted to see all of this happen. However, at that moment, Boss really chose the best option, which was sacrificing herself in exchange for the people on board to survive. If Boss dies, then what would be the meaning of us living, said Qi Long, now reddened with anger. It would be better to have Base Nebula destroyed together with Boss. Qi Long. Yang Mingji and Lu Furong, who followed Qi Long, shouted out angrily. The stuff he said were only allowed as thoughts and it should definitely not be spoken out. Otherwise, it would make the soldiers working under them feel terrible about themselves. Damn it. Damn it all to hell. Qi Long knelt on the ground. He angrily smashed the ground. He couldn't accept the result. Although they said Boss had disappeared, it actually meant that he probably wasn't alive. No one told them Ling Lan was taken away by the 7th bugle call. Ren Feiyu knew about it, but Ren Feiyu wouldn't tell anyone now. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to explain why he watched as Ling Xiao killed himself without helping him. Even if he wanted to find a chance to give out this information, he could never be able to say anything now since Ling Xiao had devoured his consciousness. As for Ling Xiao, he was more unlikely to give news that his daughter was still alive. He would rather no one know. That way his daughter would be able to freely, safely and soundly live in a faraway land. She wouldn't need to face the traps and plots created by the inner circle within the Federation. Thus, the military headquarters believed Ling Lan had died during the clash between the two profound god states. In reality, they did find a few metallic pieces floating in space. After analyzing them, they were indeed Imperial mecha pieces. However, in order to let the soldiers and citizens still have hope and not despair, they still claimed that Ling Lan had disappeared instead of killed. Otherwise, if General Ling Xiao and his descendants were to die together, it would definitely cause the Federation's people to go insane. No matter if it was this generation or the previous one, the Huaxia Federation always placed immense importance on continuing a person's bloodline. In the Federation, insulting someone by saying that they will not have any descendants was considered the worst insult. There would definitely be vengeance between the two parties if those words were to be said in an argument. I don't believe Boss died. He definitely will come back. A sharp female voice echoed in the air. Right after those words were spoken, Luo Chao and Han Shuya walked in. Qi Long lifted his head and looked at Luo Chao in hopes that she could give him a promising answer. My older brother is my twin, so there is a subtle connection between us. My heart tells me that he's still alive. He isn't dead. Luo Chao pointed to her heart and continued in a firm tone, since my brother isn't dead, Boss can't be dead since he is much more powerful than my brother. Why are you crying and lamenting? Shouldn't you be helping Boss to control the situation here so that he can gain more power in the future when he returns? What a bunch of losers you are. You are making me look down on you. Luo Chao glared at the men with contempt. They should be discussing how to stabilize Boss's power, especially since General Ling Xiao had died. No one could help Boss now. They needed to work even harder now to help Boss. Luo Chao is right. You shouldn't be lamenting in sadness. We should think about how we can help Boss control the Lingtian Independent Army and the 23rd Division. We can't let anyone take away General Ling Xiao's hard work. The general of the 23rd Division can only be Boss, Han Shuya agreed with Luo Chao. Yes, you're right. We mustn't shoot ourselves in our foot. During this time, when Boss is away, we must protect the Lingtian Independent Army. And the 23rd Division. It'll be harder to protect the 23rd Division. We don't have enough power. However, we must protect the Lingtian Independent Army. Everyone started speaking. The atmosphere soon became lively. Actually, none of them believed that boss, who was as powerful as a god to them, would die. But, they just couldn't find a reason to support their belief. Luo Chao's words finally gave them confidence. If Luo Lang was alive, boss would definitely be alive too. Yang Mingji noticed that everyone had pulled themselves together, so he opened his mouth and said, "Yes, this is what we need to do immediately. The reason why our commander sent us out is most probably because he doesn't want anyone to take over the Lingtian Independent Army. But the whereabouts of our commander is unknown. The military won't let the position remain empty. Even if they don't appoint a new commander, they will probably send us a temporary commander," Lu Furong said. "We need to discuss how we should tackle this issue and help our commander retain his position." Yang Mingji stared intently at the young heroes brought up by Ling Lan. They were all amazing talents. If they went out, every division would try and snatch them furiously. Yet, they were willing to stay beside Ling Lan and follow him. They were willing to contribute to the Lingtian Independent Army. Ling Lan was lucky to have a bunch of loyal comrades. At the same time, these young people were fortunate enough to have such a caring leader. Yang Mingji clearly knew the amount of effort Ling Lan took to groom her comrades, maybe even more than these younglings could imagine. This was the result of both sides opening their hearts to each other. For the first half of Yang Mingji's life, he had experienced a lot. He had a group of brothers in arms who went through thick and thin together. However, betrayal, politics, and schemes cost him his lifelong friends. He was disappointed and had almost given up on life. He just wanted to spend the rest of his life quietly without thinking too much. That way, his life would be easier. However, life was interesting. He was sent to the 23rd Division and entered the 250 Ace Mecha clan. Then he met a powerful and ruthless young man, Ling Lan. He could still remember the first time he saw Ling Lan. It was hard to forget him. His sharp gaze and his cold aura made him shudder and chill. He felt cold from head to toe. He received the impression that this young man must be heartless and cold-blooded, maybe even a tyrant. Other people might not notice it, but he could smell the devil blood aura hidden behind his chilling aura, an aura that could only be gotten by killing many people. Just as he expected, Ling Lan used vicious and ruthless ways to control the 250 Ace Mecha clan. The moment he acted, the more blood flowed. Yang Mingji hated his brutal methods, but soon, he realized that all the seemingly tortures were actually good for their bodies. Noticing this fact, Yang Mingji started to gain interest in Ling Lan. He observed him carefully and noticed that every time he hit someone, he would choose the spot that caused the least damage. Moreover, there would always be military doctors at the side, so the situation was always under control. Then, he saw the useless mecha operators standing up again. They basically turned into a totally different person. He began to understand that this cold-looking young man had a warm heart. The actions of Ling Lan confirmed his viewpoint. Slowly, Ling Lan gained the respect of Yang Mingji. Yang Mingji saw Ling Lan training her comrade, protecting them from getting schemed by their enemies, preventing them from becoming a chess piece of the military, and making sure that they were safe until they became someone significant. He was jealous of them. If he met such good brothers, he wouldn't have to go through so many pains and torments. He might be stronger than he currently was. Yang Mingji respected Ling Lan wholeheartedly. However, he belonged to the first martial faction. The battle for power between the two generations, the first marshal and General Ling Xiao, meant that he couldn't support Ling Lan entirely. He was always worried that he would be discriminated by Ling Lan, but instead, he didn't mind his identity at all. He told him that as long as he didn't betray Ling Tian, they could work together. It was a calm statement, but he was blown away by it. Ling Lan meant what he said. Ling Lan gave him power and authority. Yang Mingji knew that if Ling Lan wanted to give him a position without real power or take his power away, he could do it easily. There was nothing he could do to retaliate. Ling Tian's soul was Ling Lan. Anyone could be missing but not Ling Lan. Unknowingly, Yang Mingji's heart was already shifted towards Ling Lan, the Lingtian Independent Army, and this bunch of simple-minded young people who were filled with vigor and dreams. He didn't want this beautiful dream to be destroyed by the political war of the military headquarters. He wanted to protect these people, especially when Ling Lan wasn't around. Yes, he wanted to repay the person who trusted him sincerely. The person who was young enough to be his son but yet won his respect. He wanted to repay Ling Lan. The military would definitely send someone, Lu Furong continued. There is only one thing we can do. Make this person into one of us. Make him into someone who wants to protect Ling Tian and not snatch Ling Tian from our commander. Everyone exchanged glances. No one knew what to say. Actually, besides sending someone, they might choose a person among us. In that case, there will be less resistance within Ling Tian too, Lu Furong added. Yang Mingji nodded. I'm one of the candidates. Vice Commander Lu will most probably be another candidate too. However, we're not suitable for the position. Lu Furong frowned. Vice Commander Yang's identity puts him in an awkward position. The second marshal and third marshal won't agree. I have past records of crime, so the three marshals won't put me in the position too. We can push Leader Qi into the position. Yang Mingji finally revealed his and Lu Furong's decision. While Qi Long and the others were feeling sad about what happened to Ling Lan, both of them had already started making preparations. They knew that they mustn't lose their composure and cause an even greater problem. Everyone turned to look at Qi Long, who was stunned by Yang Mingji's words. After thinking about it, they realized that Qi Long was the most suitable person to temporarily take over Ling Lan's position. Most importantly, they believed in Qi Long's character, trusting him that he would not exploit boss's rightful position. They believed in Yang Mingji and Lu Furong too, but after all, they came into Ling Tian at a much later time, while Qi Long had been with Ling Lan since he was a scout. He was publicly known as the #1 underling of boss. So, after taking everything into account, he was more suitable for the position than Yang Mingji and Lu Furong. Everyone nodded in approval. Yang Mingji and Lu Furong heaved a sigh of relief after seeing that their proposal had gained everyone's approval. They were afraid that once Ling Lan was gone, there was no one to lead the team, leading to a state of disunity. This would give their enemy a window to destroy them internally. However, from the looks of it, they had been worried about nothing. Ling Lan had been instilling authoritative culture into her comrade unconsciously. When he was not around, they would still listen to their superior, for instance, Qi Long. If Qi Long wasn't around, there would be another superior they could listen to. The structure was detailed and clear-cut. The team wouldn't be in disunity because of the disappearance of one person. Yang Mingji couldn't help but admire his young commander. What kind of devil was he? How was he able to take into account so many details and make plans for so many scenarios in advance? If his commander didn't have so many enemies scheming against him, he wouldn't have been forced into this dire situation. Yang Mingji believed that when his commander passed this crisis safely, he would be able to govern over the whole galaxy. Yang Mingji started feeling pity for those people who schemed against General Ling Xiao, as they would soon regret their actions in the future. It will be difficult to push Leader Qi into the position too. We will need everyone's help. We must use all the power we have, including those of people behind you. Yang Mingji's gaze turned sharp as he scanned the crowd. Luo Chao bit her lips. She was the first to open her mouth. I will convince my father to support Qi Long secretly. Her father would help, even if it was just for her elder brother. Han Jijian followed closely. If the Qi family moves, the Han family will support wholeheartedly. His family had always moved together with the Qi family. Thus, he needed to be certain of the Qi family's intention first before showing his support. Everyone looked at Qi Long again. Qi Long wiped his face and said resolutely, if my father can help me, I'm willing to kneel down and apologize to my father for boss's sake. Qi Long's relationship with his father was not very good. If he wanted his father to ignore the third marshal and help him, he needed to make some sacrifices. This was hard for the prideful Qi Long, but for his boss, he was willing to throw his pride away. I don't know what the Li family's attitude is. You know that I don't have much sway in the Li family. Li Yingjie frowned. However, I will work hard and convince my parents to help. He was a little afraid of his grandfather. For some reason, he felt that his grandfather didn't like him, even though he was the most likely successor of the Li family. The Li family will definitely help. Closely after Li Yingjie talked, a refreshing voice sounded. Li Shiyu just rushed over from the medical department. I'll handle the Li family, Li Shiyu said with absolute certainty. His eldest cousin brother, Li Mulan, was missing too. His grandfather would definitely do something. Li Shiyu gave up the right to fight for the position of the family head, but he still was well aware of the internal workings of the Li family. He knew how important his eldest cousin brother was to his grandfather. He didn't know what the reason was or what agreement the two of them made, but as long as things weren't irreversible, the Li family wouldn't give up on Li Mulan. Hence, if his eldest cousin brother didn't leave Ling Lan, the Li family would continue supporting Ling Lan. The Li family liked to play things safe, but they wouldn't reject doing something harmless and could bring them many benefits when it succeeded. Li Shiyu turned to look at his stupid little brother. When Ling Lan decided to accept Li Yingjie into her team and groom him, the fate of the Li family became bound to the Ling Tian Independent Army. Li Yingjie slowly grew stronger in the Ling Tian Independent Army and had successfully climbed to a high position in the military, so his future was now directly tied to the Ling Tian Independent Army. The Li family couldn't forsake the Ling Tian Independent Army now. This might be heaven's way of helping Ling Lan. He didn't aim to gain anything from accepting Li Yingjie, but in the end, it helped him. I don't have a powerful background, but I do have some say in the Pu Jun. I'll seek help from them, Zhao Jun said. Don't underestimate the power of normal soldiers. They represented the mass public. Once they reached a consensus, their influence was terrifying. I'll talk to the elites, Han Jijian continued. That year, they agreed to let one of them enter the Pu Jun and the other into the elites, not because they wanted to dip their hands into everything. They just wanted to understand the intentions of grassroots units as well as the thoughts of the middle-rank officers. If they could deeply understand every level of the power chain, they would be able to make better plans and policies in the future. Of course, this was suggested by Ling Lan. Boss was afraid that they would become someone cold-blooded who would use their men like chess pieces or someone who would come up with vicious schemes that would cause unnecessary death. Constant interaction was needed to understand what the soldiers wanted, were afraid of, and their desires. Thus, when they come up with battle plans, they would take these into consideration, decreasing the number of deaths so more soldiers would be able to go back home. They listened to boss's orders diligently. After gaining a deeper understanding of these communities, they finally gained their approval. Moreover, they had a good reputation in their organizations. That was why they were able to call for help at this time. Since everyone knows what to do, let's get moving. I believe the military is already eyeing the Ling Tian Independent Army. Yang Mingji looked up at the virtual sky above their base. It was bright and sunny, but he felt gloomy. This was a hard war. They didn't have General Ling Xiao backing them now. Now, there was no one who would be able to handle the influence of the three great marshals. Actually, it wasn't just the Ling Tian Independent Army. A lot of people were eyeing to take over the 23rd Division too. Senior Colonel Lan, calm down. The marshal is currently busy now. He doesn't have the time to see you. A senior colonel was blocking a beautiful female senior colonel from entering the room behind him. He had cold sweat on his forehead as he persuaded the other party to not barge into the room. The beautiful female senior colonel was Ling Zhao's wife, Ling Lan's mother, Lan Luofeng. Move aside. Lan Luofeng glared at him angrily. Senior Colonel Lan, this is the first marshal's manner. The senior colonel stood his ground. If this lady wasn't Ling Zhao's wife, he wouldn't have been so polite. He would have called the security and chased her out. If you dare to stop me, I'll shout molest. Let's see if the people here help you or help me. Lan Luofeng didn't care about her image anymore. Her husband's body couldn't be found and her daughter had disappeared secretly. Why the F***k would she care about her image now? If the door guard really provoked her, she didn't mind acting like a bitch. The senior colonel immediately took a few steps back when he heard the sudden threat. He raised his hands in the air and looked at Lan Luofeng with a frightened expression. He was afraid that if he accidentally touched her, she might really frame him for molesting her. That would be disastrous. If the entire nation thought that he was being disrespectful to the wife of General Ling Xiao, he would be torn to shreds by them. Lan Luofeng snorted at his defensive posture and walked past the senior colonel. The senior colonel lifted his arms, but he didn't dare to stop her. If he let Lan Luofeng in, he would at most be scolded by the first marshal. But, if he angered Lan Luofeng, she might really frame him, so he decided to let her in. Lan Luofeng charged into the first marshal's office. The first marshal was currently talking to a general in front of him. When he saw Lan Luofeng barging in, he frowned slightly. He was slightly furious at the door guard for not stopping her. The general turned around and saw Lan Luofeng entering. He knew that she was Ling Zhao's wife. She must have some business here, so he got up and bid farewell to the first marshal. After the first marshal sent the general away, he turned and said to Lan Luofeng, "What are you doing here?" Lan Luofeng gave a cold smile as she looked directly into his eyes. "Why can't I ask about what happened during the war at Twilight? I'm Ling Zhao's wife. I am also Ling Lan's mother. Ling Lan shouldn't have been sent to the battlefield in the first place. What kind of idiot sent him there? I want justice for my son." The first marshal's expression turned dark. "What kind of attitude is this? Have you forgotten where you come from?" Don't you know where I come from?" Lan Luofeng sneered as she looked at the first marshal with contempt. You have no manners at all. Your father didn't teach you well. The first marshal looked disappointed. Don't mention my father. You're not worthy of mentioning him. At least my father isn't someone who would send his own son to his death. Lan Luofeng shouted angrily. If he didn't talk about her father, she might still be able to curb her anger and talk peacefully with him. However, once her father was mentioned, she couldn't control her emotions anymore. You know nothing about that. Get out of here immediately. The first marshal was indignant. Well, ask your people to chase me out then. Lan Luofeng wasn't afraid. She sat down arrogantly on the sofa opposite the first marshal and scoffed. Ask them to chase me out personally, but, do you dare to? Based on data, there were at least 4 God-class operators that died in Ling Xiao's hands. He even pulled Monarch Fury down with him before he died. This credit was enough to astound people and for his nation to give him their eternal gratitude. They moaned for the death of someone who could have stood at the top of the galaxy. As his wife, Lan Luofeng was also highly respected by the nation. The citizens wouldn't allow anyone to offend or humiliate her, not even the first marshal. If there was news that the first marshal personally sent an order to chase Lan Luofeng out of his manor, his reputation, which he built for over 100 years, would collapse overnight. Even without any actions from the second marshal or the third marshal, he would be pushed down his position by the angered citizens. This was where Lan Luofeng got her confidence from. You will anger me to death. The first marshal pointed at Lan Luofeng. As expected, someone raised by that unfilial son was no good. You won't die. You like power too much. How can you be angered to death by just my words? That isn't like you. Lan Luofeng smiled coldly. Bastard. The first marshal couldn't control his anger anymore. He slammed his hand on the coffee table beside him, shattering it in the process. Bastard? Huh, are you referring to yourself? Pain flashed past Lan Luofeng's eyes. She always wished that she was just the daughter of an ordinary family. She didn't want to be the granddaughter of this powerful but heartless old man who only wanted to pursue more power. Lan Luofeng, you are able to be so impudent because of my son. Don't destroy what's left of this relationship, the first marshal replied coldly. I told you to stop mentioning my father. Also, I'm able to be impudent because I'm Ling Xiao's wife. Lan Luofeng stood up and glared at him. All right. A third voice interjected the argument. Lan Luofeng and the first marshal looked towards the door simultaneously. An elegant lady had appeared at the door. She was the one who stopped the quarrel. Why are you here? The first marshal frowned. He had a look of disapproval on his face. Am I supposed to let the two of you continue arguing? The elegant lady, who was the mistress of the Lan family, sighed. She walked over and stood in front of Lan Luofeng. She looked at Lan Luofeng amiably. My little Luofeng, Grandma can finally take a good look at you. In the past, she could only take a quick look at her secretly or ask her fourth son to bring her over. The meeting was always hurried. However, those occasional visits stopped when her fourth son and his wife died. Even if she couldn't bring her home, she asked her sixth son to arrange for Lan Luofeng to grow up in a normal family with the same surname. They were afraid that if she was discovered without their protection, their enemy would harm her. Hence, the elegant lady didn't continue to look for Lan Luofeng too. She could only look at photos to curb her longing. When Lan Luofeng was 16 years old, she entered the military and became a JMC. The mistress used her influence to direct her to enter the relatively safe 7th Division. This division belonged to the first marshal. She hoped that her fourth son's only child was able to grow up safely. At first, she just hoped that her granddaughter would have a normal and safe life. However, she married an exceptional youth, Ling Xiao. A month later, Ling Xiao died in a war and Lan Luofeng started raising her child alone. It was tough. As Ling Lan grew older, she became more and more outstanding. Lan Luofeng finally managed to settle down. But after Ling Xiao came back, both her husband and daughter climbed higher and higher, gaining more attention and hatred in the process. Her mistress's wish for Lan Luofeng's peaceful life didn't come true. However, in the eyes of every lady in the Federation, Lan Luofeng had hit the jackpot. She had a good marriage and a good child. They gritted their teeth in jealousy when they thought about how amazing Lan Luofeng's husband and child were. If this continued, Lan Luofeng might still have a blessed life like what her grandma had hoped for. She would be able to live peacefully until her death. However, things went against her wishes. Her granddaughter had a hard life. Her husband still died in the end. The impact this time was even greater than before because this time, her only child went missing too. When the mistress heard this, she could hear her heart shattering into pieces. She felt regret too. She should have rejected the marriage between Lan Luofeng and Ling Xiao. Actually, the first marshal was happy to see Ling Xiao and Lan Luofeng getting married. If not, how could Ling Xiao chase Lan Luofeng so successfully? As the daughter of the Lan family, even though she was raised outside of the Lan family compound, they wouldn't let her get married to someone so easily. In the past, she was convinced by her husband. However, she regretted it now. She shouldn't have believed him. When he mercilessly sent her fourth son to death, she should have stopped believing him when it came to family affairs. As his wife, she knew him very well. She didn't believe that the first marshal didn't know anything about the scheme behind Ling Xiao's death. Major General Lan. Lan Luofeng saw her grandma calling her, and a look of sorrow and excitement flashed in her eyes. However, she still managed to hold it back and pretend she didn't hear her grandma calling her by her name. She only respectfully called her grandma Major General Lan. As the wife of the top-ranking officer in the military, they would often be given pseudo-military ranks because it would be more convenient for them to move around. For example, the wife of a general was always the rank of senior colonel. The wives of the three marshals would have the pseudo-rank of major general or below. After hearing herself be called Major General Lan, the mistress had a sad look on her face. It seemed that this granddaughter of hers was still hating on her husband. Luofeng, don't be angry. We can talk about it. Your grandmother is here. I will definitely make sure you're not wronged. The mistress bit her lip and said these words without hesitation. This time, she definitely wasn't going to let her granddaughter, who had gone through countless difficulties, to be wronged again. She had enough of that. She had endured time and time again for the sake of her husband's ambition. However, a person still had their own temperaments and limits. Out of her 5 sons, 4 of them had similar temperaments with the first marshal. To be honest, she had already prepared herself for when they would die on the battlefield. Thus, when reality hit, despite her being pained and sad, she would still be able to endure it. That was because she knew those were the paths her sons had chosen. They didn't regret it. Even if she was very sad, she would still not be able to change their choices. However, her 4th son wasn't like them. Her 4th son was like her. He didn't have the ambition to rise up to the top, nor did he have any dream of becoming a hero of the Federation. He only wanted to be an average person who took care of his family wholeheartedly. That was why he fell in love with an average girl and lived a calm and peaceful life. However, her husband continued to force his ideals on him. He forced her 4th son to marry some other woman because of political reasons. She didn't expect that her 4th son, who was always mild-mannered, to have some fire in him. He wouldn't marry that other woman no matter how much his father had beaten him. It was until she and her younger sister couldn't continue and watch him get beaten anymore before they silently helped him escape him out of the Lan family. Back then, she would rather not see her son than to see him get beaten to death by his father every day. She didn't know that in order to continue on with the marriage, the 2 families meddled with the marriage database. They registered the other woman as the official wife of her 4th son and allowed her to marry into the Lan family. Her 4th son's actual wife had only been actually registered as his wife after her 4th son begged the help of an imperial hacker. There were even more disgusting events that happened later. She didn't even want to talk about it. However, in the end, they cleaned it all up. The Lan family's reputation wasn't something such a commoner woman could trample on. She originally thought her 4th son's family could peacefully live their life after the whole debacle ended. Although she didn't see them often, she still would go see them from time to time. The first marshal knew about this, but he only turned a blind eye. This was why she could continue to endure him. However, she didn't think that when war had begun, the first marshal actually enlisted her 4th son into the war. She was vehemently against it, but she didn't know what the first marshal said to her 4th son because he had actually agreed to the enlistment. Before leaving for war, he requested her to take care of his wife and daughter. He said he will definitely return and take in his wife and daughter into the Lan family officially. When he said that, she actually looked forward to that future. However, in the end, she received the news of her son's death. She was in great sorrow, her heart ached so much that she fell unconscious for a few days. After she woke up, she tasked her youngest daughter to go find her 4th son's wife and daughter. However, she received news that was even more agonizing. After receiving news of her fourth son's death, his wife committed suicide on the same day. A crying Lan Luofeng, who still required weaning, was the only one left in the large house. On that day, she really wanted to rush out and bring Luofeng back home. However, that *TCH who held the official position of the wife of her fourth son wasn't willing to accept Luofeng into the family. She even used her family's influence to attempt to kill Luofeng. Her youngest daughter desperately tried to keep Luofeng alive. From then on, she was no longer in good terms with that woman. She vowed to never marry and only planned on using her influence in the Lan family to protect the bloodline of the brother she loved the most. The grandma was immensely distraught over her fourth son and her youngest daughter. All of her regret made her focus greatly on Lan Luofeng. It could be said that Lan Luofeng was definitely a person that no one could lay a hand on. This was why the first marshal's wife had erupted in anger and was determined to stand on Lan Luofeng's side. After Lan Luofeng heard her grandma's words, her eyes shined brightly. However, she quickly calmed down. Major General Lan. I do indeed have a request. Lan Luofeng went straight to the point. She came here hollering insults and making a scene not to let out her rage but because she had a goal in mind. Alright, you can say it. The mistress gave an encouraging look to Lan Luofeng, signaling her to speak her mind freely. She was already prepared for it. She would agree to anything even if Lan Luofeng wanted a planet for herself. The position of the 23 RD Division's general must be appointed to my son, Ling Lan, Lan Luofeng said calmly. After hearing those words, the first marshal, who had been silent the entire time, couldn't hold it in anymore. He instantly screamed out angrily, that's absurd. What do you mean absurd? Lan Luofeng asked without backing down. That division is a part of the Federation, not something you own. You really think your son can take on his father's mantle? That's acting without sound reason, snorted the first marshal coldly. Heh, indeed, the 23rd Division doesn't belong to Ling Xiao. However, I have a question that I would like the first marshal to explain for me. What part of military regulations dictates that the 1st, 2nd and 3rd Divisions should be under the control of the 3 marshals? The commander of the 4th and those after had also always been members from their families. So, why can't the hero of the Federation receive the same treatment? Lan Luofeng asked sharply. That had been the convention since the creation of the Federation, said the first marshal with a pale expression on his face. If that's the case, then why can't the 23rd Division have that same convention? Lan Luofeng's expression had a hint of mockery, coldness and charisma. There definitely wasn't a single bit of weakness. Was this woman in front of him still that delicate little flower he remembered? The first marshal was shocked. Luofeng. The mistress suddenly covered her mouth with tears trickling down her face. She actually saw a shadow of her fourth son's stubbornness in Lan Luofeng. It was no different than the time when he went against his father in the past. As expected, Lan Luofeng was from the Lan family. The stubbornness in her blood was not any less than others in the family. It's impossible. No one will agree to it. The first marshal felt that Lan Luofeng had gone insane. Did the death of Ling Xiao traumatize her that much to the point where she wasn't able to think straight? How can you know without trying first? Asked Lan Luofeng. I won't agree to it, replied the first marshal. I don't need you to agree. I just want you to not involve yourself in this. Lan Luofeng smiled coldly. She originally didn't plan on the first marshal agreeing to her suggestion. If he were to accept it, then he wouldn't be the first marshal. She only hoped that the first marshal would just not interfere with her suggestion. That will definitely not happen. The first marshal didn't even think and instinctively refused the idea. Why? Is my son Ling Lan unqualified for the position? Asked Lan Luofeng. If he didn't disappear, then I wouldn't have anything against it. Ling Lan is Ling Tian Independent Army's commander and his rank is lieutenant general. He is somewhat qualified to take the position, said the first marshal. However, right now, there's a huge problem and that is Ling Lan has disappeared. Disappeared. No one knows whether he's dead or alive. Lan Luofeng, think about it clearly. Even if I don't say anything, the other 2 marshals won't agree to let the position of general be given to a person who cannot be determined as alive. They can't let the 23rd Division just rot like that. My son is fine. He will definitely come back, shouted Lan Luofeng angrily. Alright, even if Ling Lan can come back, when will he come back? Asked the first marshal. The entire military headquarters cannot let an official general's position be empty for too long. It can at most drag on for 1 month. If Ling Lan can come back within a month, I won't meddle with this issue. However, if he doesn't appear within a month, I can't let the 23rd Division wait for Ling Lan forever. As the Federation's first marshal, I must take responsibility for the 23rd Division. 1 month. You clearly know that is impossible. Lan Luofeng laughed coldly. Ling Xiao's death had definitely caused Ling Lan to be cautious and careful of the Federation. She would definitely not return to the Federation and fall into the hands of those people who plotted against them. She didn't forget the words Ling Xiao had told her before heading off into war. Now, she could only try her best to hold on to the power and influence Ling Xiao had left behind. She must wait until Ling Lan matured into a super strong individual. Only then would Ling Lan come back in full force and take revenge for all of them. If you know that's impossible, then why are you even having such crazy thoughts? The first marshal was almost angered to the point of unconsciousness. Ling Lan isn't here, but I can be his acting general. Lan Luofeng suddenly tossed out a suggestion which made the first marshal shudder. He unconsciously took out a metallic box with cigarettes in them from his pocket. He took out one cigarette and lit it up. Then, he lowered his head and began to think deeply about it. Lan Luofeng becoming the acting general wasn't something that couldn't be done. As the family member of General Ling Xiao and the wife of the Federation's hero and idol, once this suggestion was tossed up for discussion, the citizens and most lower-ranking soldiers would all support it. Although the final decision was made by the 3 marshals and the military headquarters, if the citizens were to all agree to it, the 3 of them and the military headquarters must consider the thoughts of the public. The most important part was the fact that Lan Luofeng was from the Lan family. The first marshal could then send an assistant from the Lan family to aid her. That way, the 23rd Division would still fall under his faction and wouldn't be given out to the 2nd and 3rd marshals. Originally, the first marshal was already thinking about how to take the 23rd Division under his faction's control. However, he knew the 2nd and 3rd marshals also didn't want to give away such a juicy piece of meat like the 23rd Division to him. On the battlefield of the Twilight Empire, the 23rd Division fended off Zhao army and Hejia army while not losing, and they even had moments when they suppressed their opponents. Although these 2 armies were wiped out only after Qi Yaoyang's reinforcements had arrived, the 23rd Division still performed incredibly. They definitely weren't any worse than those veteran divisions that had been established for thousands of years. The 23rd Division might even be stronger than those divisions. The 3 marshals definitely had to think about how to take the 23rd Division for themselves. Will the higher-ups of the 23rd Division approve of you becoming the acting general? Asked the first marshal as he raised his head. There was still one more problem with Lan Luofeng becoming the acting general. That problem was whether she could be accepted by all the officers within the 23rd Division. If they were to refuse, no matter how strong the support of the public was, they still had to consider the officers and their thoughts on the issue. Otherwise, without them obeying her, Lan Luofeng would just be an empty shell of a general. She wouldn't then be of any use to him. The lack of an effective leader might even cause the originally overpowered 23rd Division to be in a state of disunity. In the end, it would be overrun by others. That was not something he wanted to see happen. This suggestion was given by the 23 RD Division's command center. I'm only reporting it, Lan Luofeng said calmly. They brought it up. The first marshal frowned slightly. He began to think about why the 23rd Division would do that. Were they planning on using Lan Luofeng to achieve the goal of taking the 23rd Division for themselves? The first marshal was a sly and meticulous individual. He would always think about underlying intentions and think more deeply about them. Lan Luofeng didn't make a sound. She was only standing there silently, waiting for the first marshal's final answer. The first marshal finally stood up and stared at Lan Luofeng. If you become the 23 RD Division's acting general, then you must prepare yourself. The position of the 23 RD Division's vice general will also be reinstated. As for this position, there will be 2 people. In order to let the 2nd and 3rd marshals agree to this suggestion, we must take a step back. There is no doubt that they will be putting their eyes on the position of the 23 RD Division's vice general if we take the position of general. It'll depend on you how you control the 23rd Division before Ling Lan returns as the official general. Don't waste all your efforts and then in the end have the 23rd Division be handed to others on a silver platter, warned the first marshal. Don't worry. The 23rd Division can only be Ling Lan's possession. I won't let others get a hold of it, said Lan Luofeng without hesitation. Her original weak personality now became strong and determined. She never showed this side before because back then, she had Ling Xiao. She decided to not care about anything and just willingly became the woman Ling Xiao cared for. Then when he had died, she wanted to become strong for her daughter. Instead, she got a responsible and reliable daughter who wanted to protect her, so she had no choice but to be the person being protected once again to make her daughter feel that she needed her. This pressure and responsibility made Ling Lan become stronger and moved forward without fear. Sometimes, she would think to herself whether this was the right thing to do. She shouldn't let her daughter live such a harsh life. She had once tried being more hard-headed, but her daughter was becoming more and more pushy as she grew older. Her pushiness might even have surpassed Ling Xiao. Well, in the end, she couldn't do anything about her stubborn daughter and could only relent to the fact that she had to be protected by her daughter. It had to be said that Lan Luofeng was someone who knew how to change her lifestyle well. She was just like water. She would naturally become an existence that the other party needed and perfectly cooperate with the other party. It was like this with Ling Xiao and the same with Ling Lan. However, when the two people who let her enjoy their protection suddenly left her side, she knew clearly what was her best course of action. She then naturally turned into a strong and decisive woman. At the same time, Qi Yaoyang and Qi Long met up. He told him his request. Of course, he couldn't get away without being beaten by his father and was bruised up by Qi Yaoyang. After that itch out of his body, Qi Yaoyang went straight to the third marshal's manor. He and the third marshal had a long secretive meeting on the matter of the position of Ling Tian Independent Army's commander. "Report," shouted a senior colonel officer who stood in front of the door outside the office of the highest-ranking officer on the Flying Dragon Special Forces base. "Come in." A cold voice echoed from the room. "Yes, Chief." The senior colonel pushed the button on the side to open the door. The door opened by itself and he quickly walked into the room. Ling Xiao was reading through the detailed list of information of the members of the Flying Dragon Special Forces. Although he had acquired a portion of Ren Feiyu's memories after devouring Ren Feiyu's mind, there were still some more important memories missing. The memories he lost were mostly about the Flying Dragon Special Forces, such as, how many members were in the Flying Dragon Special Forces, who were they, what were they responsible for, etc. He had no recollection of any of them, so in the past few days, he had been reading up on the insider details of the Flying Dragon Special Forces. However, Ling Xiao's weird behavior made everyone in the Flying Dragon Special Forces anxious. They didn't know what this superior of theirs, who frequently appears out of nowhere, wanted to do. "Chief, Team Leader Tsang sent this to you." The senior colonel handed a thick folder of documents to Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao took it and then waved his hand as a gesture to tell the senior colonel to leave. The senior colonel carefully left the room. He was afraid to even slightly disturb his chief's immense study session. As the door closed behind him, he breathed a sigh of relief and wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. He didn't know whether it was just him, or whether the aura on his chief had gotten much stronger after he went to join the war. It was heavy enough to suffocate him just by being in his vicinity. Ling Xiao raised his head and looked towards the door. He leaned on the back of the chair with his right hand behind his head. A devilish smile slowly formed on his face. "This is bad. Without duplication, I can't tone down my aura. Fooling these people is still easy, but it would be as easy if I faced those sly old foxes. I have to think of something." Ling Xiao frowned. He couldn't hold himself in the Flying Dragon Special Forces forever, especially when a war was about to start. He was now the Federation's highest-ranked officer tasked with roles of looking over the entire military. He must appear personally in the meetings of the higher-ups in the military headquarters. That was the only way he could weigh over those other high-ranking officers. Ling Xiao couldn't think of a way to resolve this issue at that moment, so he pushed the issue back to his mind and flipped through the documents in front of him. The problem he was facing was not only on his aura, but he was also trying to make sense of the Flying Dragon Special Forces. He discovered that in the 20 years Ren Feiyu had taken control, the Flying Dragon Special Forces split into many separate factions. It was also quite messy in the recruits aspect. Originally, there should be two kings, one from the light and one from the shadow. They would usually both stay out of each other's way and be responsible for their own missions. They would watch over each other and compete against each other. However, the new king of the Shadow faction was actually sent to the Light faction to be the new Light King's deputy. This act instantly broke the barrier between the two teams. Ling Xiao didn't know what Ren Feiyu was thinking. It seems the seemingly glamorous Flying Dragon Special Forces actually has many internal problems. There also seems to be some corruption. Ling Xiao smiled coldly. There's also this. Ling Xiao picked up a special communicator. This wasn't the communicator Ren Feiyu used publicly. However, what was strange was that the DNA linked to the communicator was indeed Ren Feiyu's DNA. Ling Xiao pushed down on it and a virtual screen appeared in front of him. The screen was filled with bits and pieces of details about some seemingly random people. Ren Feiyu, you have quite a lot of identities, huh? Interesting. Ling Xiao smiled. If someone else were to grab a hold of this communicator, they would not find anything suspicious with the details of the communicator, but with a bit of Ren Feiyu's memories, along with the information he acquired beforehand, combining the two gave him an idea of what it was for. However, these two punks seem to have a connection with my daughter. Ling Xiao flipped to the page with details about the new recruits. He looked at the two pictures as he smirked. I can use them. Soon, a summon was sent out of the chief's office. Tang Ningyu and Mu Chaoran, who had been training in the Flying Dragon Special Forces base while waiting for their new mission, were stunned when they received the summon. Tang Ningyu wiped away his stunned expression and looked at Mu Chaoran with a joyful look. Chaoran, this is your chance. If he could be acknowledged by their chief, the misdemeanors Mu Chaoran had done in the past would be erased. Tang Ningyu was worried that Mu Chaoran might be completely abandoned by their leader in the future. If that were to happen, Mu Chaoran's future wouldn't be very good. If he was unlucky, he would be given a mission that could mean his death. He didn't even know if he could come back alive from such a mission. Tang Ningyu truly acknowledged Mu Chaoran. He didn't want the person he acknowledged to go against their team leader and cause problems for himself because they were on different sides. The chief, how does he know the two of us? Mu Chaoran held back his excitement and asked in disbelief. As new recruits, although they were considered the kings of the new recruits, they were still not considered official members of the Flying Dragon Special Forces. The chief would only meet up with the leaders of brigades and teams. It was highly likely that the chief didn't even know of their existence. Don't worry about that. Let's just go there immediately. We can't be late if we want to leave a good impression with the chief. Tang Ningyu quickly grabbed Mu Chaoran and rushed back to their dorms. After changing their uniforms, they sat on the hover car and went towards the Flying Dragon Special Forces Command Center. At the command center, the senior colonel, who was the chief's deputy, saw them coming in. He motioned towards them and directed them to the chief's office. Chief, Tang Ningyu and Mu Chaoran have arrived, the senior colonel reported from outside the door. Come in. The chief's voice was sharp and dignified. The voice made Tang Ningyu and Mu Chaoran raise their heads, straighten their backs and tighten their entire body in unplanned unison. The door slowly opened and the senior colonel gestured to them to go in. Tang Ningyu and Mu Chaoran turned to look at each other. Then, they took a deep breath and walked into the room. After walking into the chief's office, they saw a large living room with a circle of sofas inside it. Further in, there was a large study that had a very large rectangular table. A sharp-looking man wearing a general's uniform was inside the room, flipping through documents. The man in the general's uniform seemed to have realized the two of them had walked in. He stood up from his desk and walked out of his study. Tang Ningyu and Mu Chaoran finally saw the real face of their chief. It was more or less the same as the one they saw through the virtual video calls. However, he was more sharp and more dignified in person. The pressure he put upon them was much heavier. The closer they got near him, the heavier the pressure. The pressure was forcing them to bend their backs and kneel in front of him. Sit. Ling Xiao gestured at the two of them to sit. He himself chose a random sofa and sat down. He then leaned on the sofa's armrest. Seeing their chief sitting down so languidly, Tang Ningyu and Mu Chaoran sat down prudently on the sofa facing their chief. I looked at the mission you have completed. All well done. Keep up the good work, Ling Xiao said indifferently. Although it were words of praise, he still had a cold expression on his face. Seeing the cold expression, Tang Ningyu and Mu Chaoran wondered if their chief was being sarcastic. However, after thinking about it, they threw that thought out of their mind because if their chief was dissatisfied with them, he wouldn't be so indirect about it. I summoned you here because I have a mission for you. This mission isn't quite suitable for official members of the Flying Dragon Special Forces to do, but you two on the other hand are still in the probation stage. If it's two of you, your actions will not draw too much attention. Ling Xiao saw them being prudent so he just went straight to the point. Yes, Chief. The two of them immediately stood up to accept their mission. Don't be so uptight. Sit down and hear me out more. Ling Xiao waved his hand to gesture to them to sit down and listen to him speak about the details. Ling Xiao quickly told them the details of the mission. As he continued revealing more and more details about the mission, Tang Ningyu and Mu Chaoran's expression gradually got more excited. They were looking at Ling Xiao with looks that were basically screaming the fact that they were looking forward to the mission and wishing for it to begin as soon as possible. This is something that only the two of you can know. Once you walk out of that door, I will not acknowledge that I have given you this mission. Whether you die or live during this mission will have nothing to do with the Flying Dragon Special Forces. You think it over and see whether you want to take up this mission. Ling Xiao's eyes were sharp as he shot a chilling glare towards them. The chill in his eyes showed them the inferior position they were in and his attitude towards them. Chief, we are willing to accept the mission, said Tang Ningyu and Mu Chaoran simultaneously as they stood up. Very good. General Ling Xiao's death involves too many factions. Your trip will definitely be fraught with danger. Once you find Lieutenant General Ling Lan, protect him until I contact you. Don't let him return to the Federation. Lieutenant General Ling Lan is General Ling Xiao's only remaining bloodline. It may be a difficult mission, but I still have to say that even if the two of you were to die, you must not let him die. Otherwise, don't come back, said Ling Xiao coldly. Yes, Chief, said Mu Chaoran and Tang Ningyu without hesitation. Even if it wasn't for General Ling Xiao, they still wouldn't let Ling Lan die because of their complicated feelings towards him. If you understand, then sign this document and set off at once. Ling Xiao couldn't wait any longer. His daughter was still in a state of crisis. In order to take over the 23rd Division he had left, along with the Lingtian independent army that Ling Lan had established, those greedy people wouldn't allow Ling Lan to live. When he told Ling Lan to leave the Federation, he was afraid that without his protection, Ling Lan wouldn't be able to avoid all of the layers of plots and traps. He would rather have Ling Lan reach a level of strength where she won't be able to plot against before returning to the Federation to deal with those people. After saying all that, Ling Xiao took out the 2 vacation applications he had previously prepared and handed them to Tang Ningyu and Mu Chaoran. The two of them saw the space where they should sign on the application. In order to separate their mission from the Flying Dragon Special Forces, they must sign the vacation application themselves. That way, if they were to be discovered, their actions wouldn't be traced back to the Flying Dragon Special Forces. It would be considered their own personal act. The two of them knew that if they were to sign it, they would become abandoned once they were caught. Tang Ningyu looked towards Mu Chaoran. Mu Chaoran reached out his hand and took the application. He resolutely signed his name on the application. He was already considered half abandoned in the Flying Dragon Special Forces. If he was about to be given up on, then he would rather use all of his efforts on protecting that person. Even if he died, it would be worth it. However, it burdened Tang Ningyu. Mu Chaoran looked at Tang Ningyu apologetically. Tang Ningyu originally had a prosperous future ahead of him. However, because of him, he was also dragged into this mess. Despite Mu Chaoran feeling sorry, he still gestured for Tang Ningyu to sign it. Mu Chaoran's desperate plea towards Tang Ningyu was clear as day. Tang Ningyu instantly woke up from his daze and immediately took the application and signed his name on it. That's right. When their chief divulged the details of the mission to them, they already had no chance to refuse, right? Once they refused, they would be surreptitiously cleaned out in the next second. Their chief was definitely not going to allow anyone who didn't participate in this mission to know about it. Tang Ningyu was daydreaming too much if he thought he had an option to refuse. Mu Chaoran saw Tang Ningyu sign his name, so he breathed a sigh of relief and asked, "Chief, where could Lieutenant General Ling go?" Just then, he was really scared for Tang Ningyu if he couldn't get his head around it and hesitated to sign. Their chief had asked them to think about it, but in reality, if they were to actually refuse, what awaited them was definitely not something good. But, everything was alright now since Tang Ningyu realized it. No matter if it's allied nations or enemy nations, he wouldn't be there. Thus, he can only go to a neutral nation. Just follow this clue and go search, said Ling Xiao. No matter if it was allied or enemy nations, no matter if it was with good or bad intentions, they would search for her everywhere. After finding her whereabouts, they would definitely quickly react to it. Only the neutral nation wouldn't give out Ling Lan's whereabouts because they wouldn't want to involve their own nation's interests or try to benefit themselves even if they knew Ling Lan's whereabouts. As long as Ling Lan was given enough time, a neutral nation wouldn't be able to take advantage of Ling Lan that easily. After taking everything into account, the level of danger of being in a neutral nation was definitely lower than being in an allied or enemy nation. Thus, as long as Ling Lan didn't go dumb, she could only go to a neutral nation. In reality, this guess, whether it was the Federation or Caesar, or the other nations involved, could be easily deduced by them. Thus, those people who wanted to take out Ling Lan would definitely send people to ambush her. They wished to kill Ling Lan before she could grow into someone they couldn't control. The reason Ling Xiao sent Tang Ningyu and Mu Chaoran was because he was afraid that Ling Lan didn't have enough manpower to win the battle of attrition. It should be known that after entering a planet, unless the planet was on martial law, mechas were prohibited from being used on the planet's surface. A mecha appearing would definitely alarm the citizens of the nation. On planets, war was fought through physical skills. As domain realm masters, Tang Ningyu and Mu Chaoran were definitely good helpers in that aspect. It was just as Ling Xiao had predicted. Countless factions had deduced the path Ling Lan escaped towards, to a neutral nation. They all sent people towards them. Some went with the intention to ambush and kill, while some went to aid and rescue. At that moment, the Destruction Devil had already arrived at a space station constructed in the public planetary sector of a neutral nation. Under the command of the space station, the Destruction Devil slowly docked on the spaceport. They had to really thank Little Seven for reducing the unneeded weight off the Destruction Devil to increase the speed. He shed off the outer shell of the Destruction Devil, turning it into a naked starship. Just one accurate hit from a beam would instantly blow it up. It was considered the most battered spaceship in the entire space station. Despite it being large and still somewhat magnificent looking, the staff members of the space station just turned a blind eye towards it. They were only surprised by its size. What they didn't know was that that battered-up starship was actually the Federation's newest starship model, the Destruction Devil. In reality, they really weren't surprised at the staff members on the space station for ignoring them. It should be known that as a neutral nation, they wouldn't refuse any ships from entering their spaceport, which included intergalactic space pirates and intergalactic mercenaries. These spaceships that explore, fight and plunder in intergalactic space would usually have starships battered up like this. Even the strongest intergalactic space pirates or mercenaries would still have such battered starships. Repairing such starships was how their space station made their money. The space station was actually a large intergalactic spaceship repair factory. It was just that calling it a space station sounded better. How do we fix this? The most skilled technician of the space station, the station commander, arrived at the spaceport. He raised his head and asked himself the major question. Tian Feng raised his head and said, "In order to get out alive, we shed the outer shell, so we would like you to apply an outer shell on the ship as we need to soon continue our adventure through the stars. Of course, the stronger the better. You're an expert in this field. I'll leave it to you. If you didn't have that token from the Rainbow Raiders, I would have shooed you away," said the station commander in an annoyed tone. "If you want to repair a garbage ship like this, anything less than 10 billion credits won't be enough. Money won't be a problem." After hearing Tian Feng say those words, the station commander's eyes lit up. "But it will be impossible for us to get that money now. Although I really want to say that we could." Tian Feng's words afterwards made the station commander's teeth hurt. "Don't worry. I have my reputation in the underworld. I will definitely give you the money." Before entering the 23rd Division, Tian Feng was actually in the Black Ops Corps of the Federation. There, he had disguised as a mercenary corps and cleaned some of the Federation's dirty laundry. Thus, his group of soldiers still had some reputation in the underworld. Truth be told, although his account didn't have 10 billion credits, he still had a few billion. However, Tian Feng didn't dare to use it. He was afraid that someone was monitoring his account, and once he used it, they would know his whereabouts. If he was by himself, it wouldn't matter if they knew his whereabouts. But, his apprehension was mostly due to the recovering Lieutenant General Ling. Tian Feng and Luo Yang had already predicted that there was a strong organization hidden behind the higher ranks of the Federation's military headquarters. These people wanted to plot against Lieutenant General Ling, especially after General Ling Zhao's death. Lieutenant General Ling would definitely be in a bad situation if he were to return to the Federation. As the loyal followers of General Ling Zhao, they, of course, wouldn't let anything happen to his remaining bloodline, so they also had the same idea as Little Seven. They decided to bring Ling Lan away from the Federation to a neutral nation. There he would be able to accumulate strength and wait for an opportunity to return to the Federation. With a garbage spaceship like yours, you won't be able to pay 10 billion credits even if you were given decades. After hearing the words of Tian Feng, the station commander had a look of disdain on his face. Such a high-cost repair would usually be done to top-tier mercenary teams. Although the 7th Bugle mercenary team had some reputation, they were still considered a mid to low-tier mercenary team. Their team wasn't considered to be anything special in the entire underworld. In reality, if Tian Feng didn't show them the token from a top-tier mercenary team, the Rainbow Raiders, the station commander wouldn't have even come out to personally check the battered starship. Well, actually, other than the external parts of the spaceship, the rest of the starship had their share of problems, especially the most important part of a starship, the engines. Due to the constant overclocking of the engine, it had caused many problems in the starship engines. If they wanted to repair it, they would have to put in a lot of work. Just repairing the engines would cost more than 5 billion credits. The station commander's forehead twitched just looking at the state of the starship. Even 10 billion credits might not be enough. Can't I write you an IOU? Don't I also have the Rainbow Raiders token to use as collateral? Seeing the station commander's expression turning more annoyed, Tian Fong was also becoming unhappy. This leader tier token of the Rainbow Raiders represented that the leader of the Rainbow Raiders was a guarantor. In the underworld, Rainbow Raiders were considered one of the 3 strongest mercenary teams. Their regiment commanders were publicly known as kings in the underworld. No one dared to look down on them. After hearing Tian Fong's words, the station commander looked at the token in his hands with a firm expression. With this thing, even if Tian Fong didn't pay the money he owed, he could take the token and ask the Rainbow Raiders for it. The Rainbow Raiders would definitely pay it without a fuss. Of course, if that day were to come, he still wouldn't use the token to trade for money. Although it could be used for payment, it would still be a poor way of using it if he actually exchanged it for money. The real value of this token was actually the regiment commander of the Rainbow Raiders owing a favor to the owner of the token. The station commander knew very well what it meant to ask a favor from one of the kings of the underworld. He definitely wouldn't use it unless he was about to die. Of course, all this would only happen if Tian Fong couldn't pay the 10 billion credits in the future. The station commander glanced at Tian Fong and asked plainly, "When are you planning on giving that money?" Although the token was a guarantee, he couldn't just keep dragging out paying the money for decades or centuries. 10 years. Of course, Tian Fong knew the real value of the token from the Rainbow Raiders. When Ling Lan handed it to him, he was shocked. He didn't know why Ling Lan had the token of a king of the underworld. Unfortunately, Ling Lan didn't explain to him. He could only predict that General Ling Xiao had some sort of relationship with the regiment commander of the Rainbow Raiders. After all, the general was a legendary individual, so it was logical he would have come into contact with legends of the underworld. 10 years. You really are shameless. 8 years. Tian Fong gritted his teeth as he forced out a compromise. It should be known that they couldn't use the Federation's money to pay because they were in a neutral nation. They must start everything from the beginning. No, it was actually even more brutal than starting from zero since they started with a debt of 10 billion credits. Even he wasn't sure whether he could gather 10 billion credits in 8 years and feed his thousands of crew members at the same time. The most I can give is 5 years. After 5 years, I will take this token and ask the Rainbow Raiders for it, said the station commander. Seeing the firmness in the eyes of the station commander, Tian Fong knew he didn't have any way of getting more time. He could only grit his teeth and relented. Alright, 5 years. He wouldn't have agreed if Lieutenant General Ling didn't say that holding on to that token was meaningless and that was better to use it to exchange for stuff they needed now. However, I have a request. Other than the 10 billion repair costs, can you loan us 5 billion credits as well? Tian Fong stared at the station commander as he spoke with a determined look in his eyes. No way, the station commander didn't even think and refused him. Don't say that, Tian Fong cut him off immediately. You and I both know what the token from the Rainbow Raiders means and how much it's worth. Asking to borrow 5 billion more isn't considered going over the top. I can only give you 3 billion, said the station commander after he thought for a moment. That's fine. Great doing business with you. Tian Fong nodded happily. The station commander instantly realized that Tian Fong had played him. If he didn't want to give the money, Tian Fong couldn't do anything to him anyway. The station commander suddenly felt blood rushing up his chest. He wanted the token so badly that he lowered his guard against this scheming individual in front of him. However, what was said was said. As the commander of the space station, he definitely couldn't go back on his word. They were business people, so they must uphold their reputation. Otherwise, if their reputation disappeared, no one would dare come to his space station to repair their spaceships. The station commander left with a frustrated expression on his face. He ordered his repair crew to repair the 7th bugle call. Tian Fong then returned inside the 7th bugle call with a smile on his face. After reaching the commander's room, he saw Luo Yang with a terrible expression on his face, while Ling Lan, who was originally resting in the room, was now actually sitting on the sofa waiting for him. What happened? Asked Tian Fong. It was odd. Why did the atmosphere in the Starship Commander room be so bad? Luo Yang's face was somewhat reddened and his breathing was hurried. It seemed he had gotten angry. Tian Fong looked towards Ling Lan who was sitting on the sofa nonchalantly. He then looked at Li Lanfeng, who was indifferent to all of this and was only carefully brewing and pouring tea for Ling Lan. In the end, he rested his questioning gaze towards Luo Yang. Luo Yang saw the look Tian Fong had given him. He angrily said, "Go ask the Lieutenant General yourself." It seemed Luo Yang was angered by something. Although Tian Fong was suspecting something was up, he still sat down in front of Ling Lan with a smile on his face and asked, "Lieutenant General, can you tell me what actually happened here?" Ling Lan's current condition was actually not any better compared to her condition after the battle on planet Haijiao. Her collar and sleeve area revealed the bandages over her body clearly. However, Ling Lan's nonchalant behavior gave Tian Fong the impression that the injuries didn't seem that severe. After hearing Tian Fong's question, Ling Lan calmly replied, "It's nothing. I just told Senior Colonel Luo that I'm going back to the Federation." These words made the smile on Tian Fong's face freeze up. Lieutenant General, can you say that again? I think my ears have heard something crazy." Tian Fong picked his ears with his fingers and asked again in disbelief. "I'm going back to the Federation for a while." Ling Lan raised her eyebrows and spoke out her decision once again. "Lieutenant General, are you joking?" Tian Fong dryly laughed. "I never joke when it comes to important matters," Ling Lan said indifferently. Tian Fong forcefully pulled his hair and swore under his breath. He actually didn't think that under such dangerous circumstances, Ling Lan was actually crazy enough to return to the Federation. Even the strongest general died in the hands of those people. If Ling Lan were to return, he would definitely be like entering a tiger's den. "Don't think too much. I'm only going back for a while. After I have done what I need to do, I'll return immediately." Ling Lan knew Tian Fong didn't have any ill thoughts against her, and was just worried about her. Thus, she patiently explained what she planned to do. Tian Fong turned around and looked towards Li Lanfeng, who was still preparing tea, and asked in a serious tone, "You agreed with him?" He had heard that Li Lanfeng was someone with many plans and strategies in mind. Why didn't he try to stop the Lieutenant General's dumb decision? "I will listen to the Lieutenant General," Li Lanfeng replied very calmly, but Tian Fong saw the helplessness in Li Lanfeng's eyes. It seemed Li Lanfeng also disagreed with the Lieutenant General on this decision, but in the end, Li Lanfeng didn't succeed in stopping him. "Although we belong to different clans, according to the wartime regulations, if a clan was to lose communications with the Federation, the person with the highest rank shall be Supreme Commander. Thus, you are our commander. In that respect, we don't have the right to go against the decisions you make," said Tian Fong with a cold look on his face. "However, the decision you are making is too dangerous. It's even an illogical one. I have to ask the reason why you want to go back. If you can't convince me, then I won't agree to you returning to the Federation." Tian Fong's words made Luo Yang more determined. Their expression showed that if they couldn't be convinced and Ling Lan still wanted to leave, then there will be bloodshed thereafter. Seeing Tian Fong and Luo Yang being worried for her, it reminded her of the time when she was young and arrogant. Back then, she led a ship full of students and took control of the 7th Bugle Call. It should be said that her actions offended them greatly. Even if she had asked her father to clean it up for her by taking in the 7th Bugle Call into the 23rd Division to erase their punishments, all of this was still her fault. If these people were narrow-minded, they might have hated her for their entire lives. However, she didn't think that in the end, the people who came to rescue her were actually them. In the end, they even chose to betray the Federation and took her into the territory of a neutral nation. Of course, Ling Lan knew that his father was the reason the two of them saved her with all of their efforts. The longer she was in the military, the more she understood what kind of position her father held in the hearts of the soldiers. It wasn't the usual respect they had for a high-ranking officer. Instead, it was an idolization from the heart. Such a terrifying effect was closely related to the 16 years of time when her father had died. In that time, the military headquarters worked their hardest to create geniuses and monstrous individuals to perfect them into another Ling Xiao through magnifying the accomplishment he had done and picturing him as the perfect soldier. Just like that, after years of hard work, it affected that generation of soldiers. As time passed, those soldiers grew up and became higher-ranking officers in the military. These officers then affected the soldiers they were leading and carved this idolization into the hearts of all levels of the military. The seeds were sown, and buds had bloomed. After Ling Xiao had returned and became a general, the military headquarters then discovered that their decision back in the day was extremely dumb. They made an idol powerful enough to sway the minds of the common soldiers. Perhaps this was the reason some people always plotted against Ling Xiao and some people chose to just watch from a distance. Ling Xiao's existence had indeed bred a lot of negative feelings. Ling Lan didn't want these two people, who cared about her, to become sad because of her. She thought for a moment and then said, "My mother has already taken a big hit with the fact that my father is no longer around. If I don't report back to her, I'm afraid she might not be able to hold on." After saying all that, Ling Lan's eyes turned dim. "Something already happened to my father. I don't want anything to happen to my mother. Otherwise, what's the point of me getting out alive?" Tian Fong wanted to say something against that line of thought, but words couldn't come out of his mouth. The general's wife is well guarded. It will be hard to get close to her. Plus, I am sure that there are countless people watching her every move because they are sure you will go back to her once you return, said Luo Yang. No matter where they escape to, after how many years, they still have to return to the Federation in the end. After all, that's where their roots were at, and the fact that the death of General Ling Xiao still had to be avenged. I know, but I am confident I won't alert them of my presence. In terms of mecha piloting, there were many people stronger than her. She could guarantee that. However, in terms of physical skills, other than her master Mu Shui Qing, it wouldn't be that easy to detect her even if it was against an Imperial Realm formidable warrior. The only troublesome matter was that without Little Four, it will be difficult to enter Planet General. As long as there was a will, there was a way. Who are you taking with you? Don't tell me it's just you. I will definitely not agree to that. Tian Fong knew he couldn't stop Ling Lan anymore. He could only try to think of ways to increase the chances of Ling Lan surviving, so that he could return safely. Quality over quantity. I will take Li Lanfeng and Luo Lang. Just the three of us is enough, replied Ling Lan. No way. The three of you won't be enough. It's too dangerous. Tian Fong didn't even think and refused Ling Lan's proposal. Making fake identities is troublesome. Li Lanfeng and Luo Lang have fake identities from during a previous mission, explained Ling Lan. You don't have to worry about that. Our identity before was a mercenary team. We can disguise ourselves as a mercenary team and enter the Federation, rebutted Tian Fong. Mercenary teams can only enter the Federation. Only soldiers and citizens with good backgrounds can enter Planet General, replied Ling Lan. Plus, without enough strength, you going there will be a burden. Major General Tian Fong, don't forget, back then, your people all lost to me. Tian Fong turned speechless. In the end, he could only say helplessly, in that case, please be careful. Okay. Ling Lan nodded gratefully. As she was standing up to leave, Li Lanfeng quickly draped her cloak over her. Tian Fong also stood up and led Ling Lan out of the room. After reaching the door, he suddenly spoke up, Lieutenant General, the 7th bugle call needs around 45 days to get repaired. If you don't return in 45 days, we will take the 7th bugle call back to the Federation, and if that happens, we won't be able to keep in contact with you anymore. This was Tian Fong's decision and was also a reminder for Ling Lan. Although his words seemed heartless, his tone still carried a hint of care and hope. All in all, Tian Fong hoped Ling Lan could return safely, take the 7th bugle call to the place Ling Lan needed to go and achieve greatness. I understand. Ling Lan put out her hand. Tian Fong put out his hand and the two of them shook each other's hands firmly. This was the promise made between the two of them. A starship coming from a neutral nation slowly moved towards a third-level planet that belonged to the Federation, Planet Xiagang. The security on the port on Planet Xiagang was normally quite lax, but for some reason, the port today was swarmed with guards and patrols. Normally, travelers could go in and out of the port without much of a hassle. Now, they had to line up and go through complicated customs procedures to even leave the port. However, those tourists had to endure all those complicated procedures no matter how troublesome the procedures were. A lot of tourists had annoyed looks on their faces. However, there were 3 youngsters who stood out with gleeful expressions. They totally looked like inexperienced travelers. Even though they were waiting in line for a few hours, they didn't seem to be annoyed by the fact. The 3 of them were sometimes huddling and laughing together. They would occasionally look at their surroundings with faces full of curiosity. Despite being young, the 3 of them had completely distinctive auras to them. One of them, despite his features being well put together, didn't have anything special to him. He could be easily forgotten after meeting him once. This average-looking youngster looked like the oldest of the 3. But, there was a sense of steadiness to him even though he was young. He was probably their elder brother. The second youngster had features which would leave an unforgettable impression once one laid their eyes on him. There was a hint of arrogance between his eyes, yet he was quite handsome. Everyone who saw him couldn't help but marvel at how handsome he was. Even though he seemed somewhat arrogant, his face didn't instill the feeling of annoyance in the onlookers. This youngster's age was probably in the middle of the three. That was because the last youngster could be identified as the youngest from just one look. He had a tender and cute face with a sweet smile plastered over it. As long as one was a woman, no matter their age, they would suddenly have the instinct of a mother, holding him in their arms to pinch that cute smiling face. It was finally their turn. The oldest was the first to go up and scanned his communicator on the scanner. Qiu Fengyu, 18 years old. Birthplace, Chaotic Lands. Shi Qingxiao, 17 years old. Birthplace, Chaotic Lands. Mu Aibao, 16 years old. Birthplace, Chaotic Lands. They originated from the same place. However, it was odd that the Chaotic Lands could produce such naive youngsters with their barbaric ruling. The inspector standing beside the optical supercomputer glanced at the three of them with a curious look. However, his jaw dropped wide open when he saw the frost emblem on their chests. If his memory was correct, that emblem was the mark for the faction of one of the kings in the Chaotic Lands, the Frost Monarch. As a border customs inspector, he had to be knowledgeable of the emblems and totems of different nations and factions in the galaxy. They are members of the Frost Monarch's faction while being so young. It seemed these three youngsters required special attention. The inspector concluded and sent a message to the inspection office on planet Xiagang. After the three of them enter into the borders, the inspection office would be monitoring them 24/7 until they leave the planet. Despite the relationship between Chaotic Lands and the Federation being relatively on good terms, they still needed to monitor them for the safety of the Federation. The three youngsters were quickly allowed into the borders. They went on the shuttle and entered into the planet's atmosphere. Right as they left the airport, a few undercover inspectors followed them. The three youngsters didn't seem to have noticed. Perhaps their strength had not reached the point where they could detect them. They were still talking and laughing with each other while being oblivious to the prying eyes behind them. They walked to the hover car station and rode in a hover car until they arrived at the closest city to the airport, Sand City. In Sand City, two distinct attractive women entered into a department store, one being marvelous and the other soft and beautiful. They instantly drew the attention of everyone in the store. Especially those young boys who were brought in by their mothers and grandmothers. No matter if it was males or females, they were all looking intensely at one of the girls' bosoms. These little boys were still too young to understand the beauty of a woman. The reason they were staring so intently was because something was on top of that woman's bosom. It was a white round object that was sitting between the breasts of that woman. Its big bright eyes made these children want to hug it and kiss it. Han Shuya pulled Little White away from her chest with an annoyed look on her face and tossed it to Luo Chao. That little pervert actually kept rubbing against her chest. Did it think that she didn't know? Luo Chao caught Little White in midair and asked in shock, "Shuya, what's wrong?" The reason they came to Sand City was because of Little White. Little White missed Boss too much, causing it to be in a sick state every day. It would just lazily flop down somewhere, not moving or eating. Everyone was afraid something might happen to it, so they sent the two of them to Sand City to find things Little White might like to eat. They had to make it eat something. Nothing. I just don't like holding it. Han Shuya pouted. She couldn't outwardly say she got taken advantage of by a pet. In reality, she believed Qi Long and the others were worrying about it too much. They didn't need to worry about this little blob at all. Even if it didn't eat for years, it would still be fine. This blob might still be lively jumping around when they all die of old age. Oh. Luo Chao didn't think much of it and accepted Han Shuya's explanation. She put Little White in her arms and softly asked, "Little White, do you like these? If you like them, I'll buy them for you." Little White rubbed against Luo Chao, but it felt sad because it wasn't as comfortable as Han Shuya. But, he still looked at the snacks with little excitement. Then, it dug itself back into Luo Chao's arms, not looking around anymore. "Little White doesn't seem to like any of them," said Luo Chao with concern. Han Shuya said helplessly, "You actually don't have to worry about that little guy. Its life force is very strong. It'll be fine. But it should at least eat something. It is the only thing Boss left for us. We can't let anything happen to it." Luo Chao gently rubbed Little White's head with a thought in mind. "All right. Let's go find another place that sells food." We have all the time in the world. Han Shuya could only give in to the worried Luo Chao. Luo Chao and Han Shuya took Little White and left the store. The store was left with countless saddened and reluctant looks. The commercial street Luo Chao and Han Shuya went to next was the most lively street. There were many people moving about. The first stop of the three youngsters from the chaotic lands was also this street. These two groups of people passed by each other. Little White slowly raised his head and his eyes brightened. Then he dug himself back into Luo Chao's arms and once again didn't care about the stuff around them. The three from the chaotic lands shopped on the street for the entire day and bought many things. Then they found the closest 5-star hotel and stayed there for the night. At that moment, the staff members from the inspection office, who were monitoring them, were hard at work. The origination of their funds have been successfully found. They are indeed from the chaotic lands. Nowadays, other than small shops and stands on the streets, larger stores all scan communicators for payment. The job of these inspectors were to ensure that these funds were real in nature and came from unsuspicious origins. There are no issues with their identities. They are just wealthy people under the Frost Monarch's faction and coming here as tourists, said the chief of the inspection office after seeing there wasn't anything wrong with the data they had gathered. Should we recall the people monitoring them? The inspection office didn't have that many manpower available to follow people around. There were too many people they needed to monitor. As long as people were deemed as not a problem, they would recall their men and transfer them to monitor more suspicious individuals. Let's not recall all of them. Keep 2 and monitor them tomorrow. The chief was still guarded against the chaotic lands, so he made the decision to monitor them for 1 more day just in case. Understood. The staff member immediately gave out the orders to the inspectors in disguise and told them of the changes for tomorrow's work. After entering into their room, the oldest of the 3 youngsters began to inspect the room. It was as though he was trying to familiarize himself with the items in the room. The arrogant yet handsome youngest walked to the window and opened the curtains, looking at the scenery outside. The youngest slowly walked to the living room sofa and sat down. The oldest seemed to have finished scanning and came beside the youngest as he shook his head slightly. The one at the window returned almost at the same time and said softly, "There's still 2. The rest all left." The youngest, who originally had a sweet smile on his face, now had a chilling facial expression. The outer appearances of the 3 of them suddenly changed. One became extremely beautiful, one became handsome and the last one became cold as ice. The 3 of them were Li Lanfeng, Luo Lang and Ling Lan respectively. Through reaching the realm of Domain 1 would have slight control over the muscles and skin of their face. They could change their features temporarily, achieving a different look. However, the amount they could change was still limited. They couldn't really change too much of their features. Of course, there were special cases like Li Lanfeng. Even Ling Lan didn't know how Li Lanfeng had changed his beautiful face into the face of an average Joe. This made Luo Lang, who couldn't change his looks that much, become jealous of him. Luo Lang had asked Li Lanfeng about his secret. However, Li Lanfeng only told him that he also didn't know. It didn't really take much on his part to turn himself into an average Joe. Ling Lan carefully studied it and then came up with an explanation that Luo Lang understood. It was because Li Lanfeng's face was already perfect. All the parts, muscles and skin of the face were in perfect harmony. It could be said that it had already reached its limit. Thus, when that limit was changed slightly, it lost its harmony, completely destroying the balance of his face. That was why he suddenly had such average looks. In reality, Ling Lan was also like this. When she restrained her aura, her looks would become incomparably beautiful. It was just that her type of beauty wasn't the same as Li Lanfeng's. In addition to her immature look and lack of stunning features, there was an added adorableness to her. It was also similarly at a limit of sorts. After changing it slightly, she also lost her beautiful colors, leaving her with only cuteness. Perhaps Ling Lan's cold and dominant side left too much of an impression on Luo Lang and Li Lanfeng. The 2 of them were actually oblivious of Ling Lan's cute side. A chance to discover the truth was missed by them just like that. "I already know where they are," Ling Lan said calmly. "Ah. When did you know, boss?" Luo Lang had a face of shock. Weren't they just buying things in the store? Even when his sister went by him, he didn't dare to have any change in expressions because of the inspectors behind them. "It was Little White," replied Li Lanfeng. Li Lanfeng, who could also communicate with Little White using spiritual power, knew how Ling Lan was able to acquire that information. "We can't get into Planet General with our current identities. If we want to go there, we have to hide within Ling Tian and let Qi Long and the others take us there, replied Ling Lan. Although Ling Lan couldn't contact Little Four, she was still certain that the learning space was still in her mind space. As long as the learning space was in her mind, she trusted that Little Four was fine. One of the possible reasons she couldn't contact Little Four could be that Little Four was injured and needed to recover in the learning space. It could also be because Little Four was evolving again, so he temporarily separated himself off from her. Ling Lan thought of many reasons just to give herself confidence that Little Four would return to her. Although Little Four was gone, there was still Little Seven. Ling Lan spoke with Little Seven on the 7th bugle call. Little Seven was clearly much more warm and talkative to Ling Lan than Tian Fang. It was also Little Seven who decrypted the mainframe and found the information that the Ling Tian Independent Army was staying on planet Xiagang. If it wasn't for the fact that Little Seven couldn't be too far from its main body, Ling Lan really wanted to take Little Seven with her. Now that they didn't have Little Seven, they can only depend on themselves in the virtual world. Luckily, Li Lanfeng could be considered half of a hacker even though he wasn't as invincible as Little Four or be able to be like Little Seven and easily decrypt a mainframe. He was still more than enough when it came to those hard-to-detect surveillance equipment. They were originally planning to get close to the base of the Ling Tian Independent Army and use their spiritual power to call out to Little White. They didn't think that they'd be so lucky to actually pass by Luo Chao and Han Shuya on the same commercial street they were on right after they arrived in Sand City. What was even better was that they had brought Little White. This allowed Ling Lan to easily contact Little White and receive the information she needed. However, the base Qi Long and the others are resting at is heavily guarded. Boss, your spiritual power was severely affected and you temporarily lost your hacking abilities. Using just Brother Lanfeng's power to silently infiltrate is pretty much impossible. The base wasn't a hotel that could let Li Lanfeng easily cut off all surveillance. As long as Li Lanfeng missed one surveillance equipment, they would be completely exposed. I will go by myself tomorrow night. You guys wait for me here, Ling Lan said coldly. That, Luo Lang was just about to say it was too dangerous, but Ling Lan shot a chilling glare towards him, forcing his words to be stuck in his throat. Boss in the past few weeks revealed some of his weak side because of General Ling Xiao. His originally heavy and dominant pressure also weakened by quite a lot. In addition, in order to respect Tian Fang and the other crew members, after all, they worked under Ling Xiao and wasn't part of Ling Lan's crew, Boss's tone was more peaceful than normal and he would calmly discuss everything to them. It almost made him forget that Boss was a dominant, invincible and unreasonable person. However, as time went by after they left the 7th bugle call, in addition to Tian Fang and the others not being present, Ling Lan's dominant presence slowly returned. Just from that look, he saw Boss from the past who would give out orders without the need for any explanations. A team of patrol units had just passed by the main door of the base. Little Zhao, is there anything suspicious? The team leader walked to the guard station and asked the guard with a pleasant expression on his face. Second Lieutenant Lin, nothing at all. The regular citizens who live close to this area all know what kind of place this is. They won't go past the restrictive line. Little Zhao smiled. Although the guards needed to be on guard throughout the night, there was hardly even any action because the citizens around knew what they should do and what they shouldn't do. Additionally, planet Xiagang was in the inner parts of the Federation and was considered as an unimportant third-rate planet. It had been peaceful here for decades. It was so safe that sometimes these guards would be able to take a nap without anyone finding out. However, we still need to be careful. After all, it's different from before, said Second Lieutenant Lin. Little Zhao immediately replied, Second Lieutenant Lin, don't worry. We will definitely take caution during these times. While the two of them spoke, a thin fog began appearing in the air around them. Weird weather. It's foggy again, said Second Lieutenant Lin as he put out his hand to feel the humidity of the air. Planet Xiagang was a planet with an abundance of water. Out of the 200 or so days among the 5 seasons, there were at least 180 days with foggy weather. It should be known that a planet with an abundance of water would never become a third-rate planet even if all the other resources were lacking. Planet Xiagang becoming a third-rate planet was mostly due to the constant foggy weather. Second Lieutenant Lin took out the walkie-talkie and said, Team R19, Lin Yunbin has a situation that I would like to report to the command center. Please speak, Second Lieutenant Lin. A soft and beautiful voice rang from the other side of the walkie-talkie. It was a JMC from their base. Level 1 fog has appeared at Area R1. Lin Yunbin then felt the humidity on his hand increasing. It has now increased to Level 2 fog. Command Center has received this information. Now I will officially send Second Lieutenant Lin's report. Can you confirm? Asked the JMC. Second Lieutenant Lin closed his eyes and felt the fog once again. He confirmed that the level 2 fog didn't increase and then replied, confirmed. Documentation successful. If there are any new developments, please report to the command center as soon as possible. Thank you. The JMC ended the call. After Second Lieutenant Lin made his report, he said goodbye to Little Zhao and continued to patrol the next area. When the patrol team left, Little Zhao felt the thick fog behind him actually dissipate a bit. After a short while, the fog gradually disappeared, returning to the clear skies. The fog went away pretty quick. Little Zhao was surprised. The fog would usually turn thicker as they went through the night. They used to have to wait until the sun raised the next day for the fog to slowly dissipate and disappear. It's probably because it's thin. His colleague beside him made a guess. Yeah, that's possible. If the fog was thin, it would dissipate quicker. The two of them didn't pay too much attention to the odd situation and continued to stand on guard. Although there were high-tech surveillance equipment, the existence of hackers still required actual people to stand on guard. This was a medium-sized base. Normally, as a military base, there wouldn't be any tall buildings. Normally, 3 stories was considered the limit for buildings. However, there were instead 5 to 6-story towers all around the base. On the towers, there were also soldiers standing on guard, watching their surroundings with focused eyes. This fog is getting thicker. It's getting harder and harder to see. A soldier on a tower, who was using a high-powered telescope to look around, saw areas of the base turning more and more blurred because of the fog. He couldn't help but frown at his observation. His colleague behind him said, "Activate the infrared and thermal radar. It'll guarantee not a mouse can escape." I know, but I like looking at things in their natural state, not with red and purple colored lines. It hurts my eyes. The soldier with the telescope pouted. Then, just leave it to the mainframe. Technology these days has decreased the mainframe's margin of error to 1 in 1 billion, his colleague said nonchalantly. Yeah, I know, but what if by chance we're unlucky today? The soldier on guard remembered the disciplinary hearing from some time ago. It was because a guard believed in the mainframe too much and didn't perform his duties. The mainframe then had an error, causing it to mistake a rabid wild dog as an enemy attack, causing the entire base to be on full alert, causing a huge commotion. In the end, they discovered it was just a false alarm. In the end, not only did that soldier get a life ban from being able to involve in politics, he was also sentenced by the military court to military prison for 30 years. After this event happened, all of the soldiers on guard didn't dare to slack on their duty. Take that back. Something like that only happens once in a few hundred years. How could it happen to us? Don't jinx it, his colleague instantly shouted. Alright, I'll stop talking. I will set the mainframe and then keep watch as well. The soldier on guard felt that he was too paranoid. Thus, he set the mainframe to be the primary judge of the situation and left himself as the secondary judge. While they weren't paying attention and speaking to each other, the originally thick fog slowly dissipated. At that moment, on the roof of a random barack, there were 2 people, one standing and one laying down. The one laying down was chugging down a beer bottle. There were many such empty bottles beside him. It seemed he had been drinking quite a lot. Qi Long, do you plan on drinking yourself to death? Han Jijian frowned. He had a hint of anger on his face. After hearing that question, Qi Long finally took his lips off the bottle and turned towards Han Jijian. If I don't drink, I will go insane. Qi Long looked at the pitch-dark sky with only a few shining stars. His originally honest face actually became somewhat twisted. Do you know what kind of promise I made in the past? The veins on Qi Long's clenched fist popped out. I promised that if someone wanted to hurt boss, they would have to kill me first. But where was I when boss needed me the most? I was in the safest starship fleet that our boss had arranged, drinking and eating. Qi Long angrily tossed his bottle on the ground. Bang! The bottle was instantly shattered into dust and the beer splashed everywhere. Some people suddenly appeared from the darkness. After seeing Qi Long and Han Jijian on the roof, they all understood what was happening. Then, they silently retreated back into the darkness as if they never existed. I hate it so much. From the very beginning, I shouldn't have agreed to boss's arrangements. I should be beside our boss. Just like Luo Lang, Xie Yi, and Li Lanfeng. Qi Long's expression was filled with regret. Bang! A loud and sharp slap ruthlessly went across Qi Long's face. Qi Long looked at Han Jijian in shock. He didn't think that Han Jijian, who always supported him, would actually hit him. Han Jijian said coldly, "Han Jijian, you acting like this is F***king disgusting. 1292 pampered by the boss. That slap was for boss. If boss was here, it wouldn't be just a slap. He would instead beat you until you wake up from your current pitiful self." The right hand Han Jijian used to slap Qi Long was placed behind his back, hidden from Qi Long's view. It was trembling uncontrollably. His originally white and elegant hand, quickly began to throb, turning his hand blood red. Qi Long had instinctively used his domain concept to protect his body, so when Han Jijian, who had just reached pseudo-domain stage, slapped him, his hand got injured from the slap. Boss is so strong. How could anything happen to him? He will definitely come back. We have to believe in him, said Han Jijian. Rather than wasting time regretting your past decisions, you should be standing firm and be thinking of ways to help boss protect the Ling Tian Independent Army. Despite Uncle Qi agreeing to ask the third marshal for help, it doesn't mean it will work. Don't forget there's still the first marshal and second marshal. After hearing all that, Qi Long instantly laughed in a pained tone and said, "What can I do? Tell me, what else can I do?" Han Jijian's mouth opened, but he didn't know what else to say. "See, even you don't know what to do," Qi Long's eyes suddenly reddened. "We're all useless trash. Without boss, we can't do anything right." Qi Long's right arm laid on top of his eyes. His voice was hoarse with a hint of sniffling. "When boss was here, I didn't realize how helpless we are without him. Now I understand, we are too pampered by boss. Boss has always been protecting us from traps and plots against us. He gave us a peaceful space to grow. What bloodshed have we gone through for us to grow into such young and promising general and major rank officers? Boss is the only person who actually went through bloodshed, while we just hide behind him and reap the benefits." Even though Qi Long used his arm to cover his face, he still couldn't hide the tears trickling down his face. "Jijian, I'm sad not only because boss isn't here with us. What's more saddening is that I realize and understand everything boss has done for us in the past. In the end, the strict rules and terrifying training were only for us to stay alive longer. The most depressing fact is that him leaving us here wasn't because we are a so-called trump card. Instead, it was because he believed that our wings had fully grown and that it was our time to fly on our own." Qi Long was actually quite smart. It was just there was Ling Lan and Han Jijian beside him, so he hid the intelligent part of him behind his honest-looking face. He wanted to be an honest person that everyone trusted. Each one of them were trying to find the place they belonged to. They all molded their strength for the team and more or less hid the similar talents they shared and only improved their most unique talent. It was because of this that each one of them were all unique in their own ways, becoming one-of-a-kind members within the team. Boss knew from the very beginning that he was facing an impossible situation, but I was so blind to see it. What Qi Long regretted the most was at the fact that he had ignored the warning his intuition had given him. He ignored it time and time again. If he had placed more importance on it and if he didn't leave boss's side, he might have been able to help boss. Everyone believed that if they were alongside Ling Lan, the result would be different. However, in reality, when faced against a god-class operator, no matter how many people were there, they would still become cannon fodder, and ultimately useless in the end. Of course, Qi Long and the others didn't know these details, that was why they were thinking that way. However, even if they knew, they would still make the same decision as Li Lanfeng, Luo Lang and Xie Yi. Even if they were to die, they would want to die together with boss. Sometimes, death wasn't a painful thing. Usually, it was the people who were alive who felt more pain than those who died. Even if that's the case, do you think you're honoring boss by acting like a slob? Han Jijian's eyes also reddened as he asked Qi Long. "I know. I also want to regain my composure, but I can't do that right now. I think I can only sober up from this mess if boss ruthlessly beats me up." Qi Long laughed with tears in his eyes. He was a masochist to boss. Getting beaten up by boss would give his life some meaning. At that moment, fog began appearing in the air. The fog slowly became thicker. Han Jijian felt Qi Long's silhouette was becoming more and more difficult to see. In the end, the two of them were split apart by the fog. Domain active. The U0026 symbol appeared on Han Jijian's forehead. The fog that surrounded him was suddenly dissipated, but Qi Long, who was just a hand's reach to him, was nowhere to be seen. Han Jijian's expression changed instantly and shouted, "Enemy attack." However, their comrades, who were hidden in the shadows, weren't reacting to his shout. Han Jijian's expression changed once again, but he quickly calmed down. He carefully looked around his surroundings. There were two possibilities why his comrades didn't move. One possibility was that they were all knocked out. However, Han Jijian didn't believe that. In the entire Barak, just their Ling Tian independent army, there were already a number of domain realm masters and Qi Long. These domain realm masters couldn't have been silently taken out. Even boss wouldn't have been able to do something like that. Then it was the second possibility, which was that he had been taken into the opponent's domain. That was why his voice couldn't be heard by the people who were not in the domain. Perhaps all of his movements in this area were not real. Perhaps on the outside, he might be just standing there without making any noise. "Who are you?" asked Han Jijian. It was silent all around him. Other than the thick fog, he couldn't see anything else. Was it boss? Han Jijian remembered Ling Lan's domain concept. It could change between 3 different states of water. However, the humid feeling from the air was different from their boss's ice-cold domain. Even if their boss changed into thick fog, it would still have an icy presence. The liquid state was also bone-chilling, not to mention the ice element. It was a real Ice Age cold. Right as Han Jijian was still thinking about all that, he suddenly jumped upwards. The spot he was just standing on had a glowing Chinese character shield appear. A dark spear ruthlessly stabbed into the shield, cracking it into pieces. The shield then dissipated into countless characters and flew into Han Jijian's forehead, while that dark spear also completely disintegrated before turning back to fog. It then quickly melded with the fog around them. Han Jijian cautiously looked at the fog around him. There was doubt that the enemy was hidden within the fog and could attack him at any time. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh! Countless fog arrows suddenly shot out from the surrounding fog. They were coming at Han Jijian from all directions. Han Jijian's expression changed instantly and shouted, "Jin!" A large character, Jin, began to expand from his body and covered his entire body within it. The fog arrows all hit the Jin character. The golden color of the Jin character began to slowly turn dim as fog arrows hit it continuously. After blocking the last fog arrow, the Jin character completely shattered. Han Jijian spat out a mouthful of blood. The extra damage dealt to the Jin character was transferred to him. The shattered character instantly flew into Han Jijian's forehead, healing Han Jijian's spiritual power in the process. A silhouette of a human figure slowly entered his eyes. The figure was completely masked by the fog, so Han Jijian couldn't make out who the figure was. "Who are you?" Han Jijian frowned and asked softly. "The dead don't need to know too much," a hoarse voice answered. The voice sounded like nails scratching on a chalkboard. As Han Jijian tried to see through the figure, his frown got even more pronounced. It was as though he was facing a shadow that didn't exist. Luckily, Han Jijian realized quick enough that it was just his mind playing tricks on him. If the figure in front of him didn't exist, it wouldn't have answered his question. However, before Han Jijian could think about his current predicament further, the figure charged forwards with a dark spear coming straight at him. Han Jijian's eyes stared intently at the incoming spear. He pointed at the spear with his forefinger and a line of characters flowed out of his fingers, which then turned into a shield of light. Then it ruthlessly clashed with that large dark spear. Bang! The two domain concept clashed into one another, which resulted in a deafening bang. Han Jijian was sent flying backwards. When he was about to smash onto the ground, he quickly balanced himself on one hand, somersaulted, and stood up like nothing happened. Han Jijian focused on his ears to determine whether the commotion here had alerted the entire base. However, he was disappointed. It was silent all around him. There wasn't any movement. It was as though he was the only person in this thick fog. Oh, wait, there was also a mysterious enemy, hiding in the shadows, watching his every move. Han Jijian chose to clash with his domain concept because he wanted to use it to make some noise to alert his comrades of the enemy. However, now it seemed his plan was seen through by the opponent, as the noises and commotion in this area had already been muffled by the figure before they started clashing against one another. No one outside of the figure's domain would be able to hear the commotion. Han Jijian began to worry. He was afraid something might have happened to his comrades outside of the domain. However, he couldn't spare them too much of his attention, as there were already a lot of worrying matters on his side, like the fact that the figure was much stronger than him. Han Jijian was in trouble. Qi Long, on the other hand, was also in a similar situation. Similarly, he was also pulled into the domain world. It was just the domain world he was in, wasn't the same foggy domain that Han Jijian was in. It was instead an open and vast space, so much so that one would never see the end of it. The instant Qilong was dragged into this domain, his eyes lit up with fervor. His decadent behavior seemingly vanished from his body. He jumped up from his relaxed posture, stood up and stared at the air in front of him. "Come out," Qilong said calmly. After saying those words, a black-cloaked individual slowly appeared from between the twisting and crackling air in front of him. In the end, the individual pierced through the twisting air and turned corporeal. What kind of domain concept is this? Air element? Spatial element? Qilong muttered under his breath. No matter if it was the black-cloaked individual's way of appearing or the appearance of his domain, Qilong wasn't familiar with either of them. With such little information, Qilong was unable to make any judgment about the situation in such a short time. He had to be cautious against any unfamiliar domain concepts. Qilong put out his hand towards the black-cloaked individual and then clenched it firmly. The space around the black-cloaked individual instantly began to shake. It seemed like it was going to shatter at any moment. Right at that moment, the black-cloaked individual suddenly disappeared and appeared behind Qilong. Dimension element. Qilong was shocked. In the secret database of the Federation, there was a blimp in the history of the development of human physical skills, and that blimp was caused by the emergence of a terrifying domain realm master. That domain realm master could even kill those above his stage. After entering the domain stage, he turned into an invincible war god. Moreover, his domain gave him basically superiority against any mechas under the god class, and that his domain concept originated from the dimension element. The dimension element was definitely a real-life cheat code that existed. However, in the end, the individual with this heaven-defying power couldn't control himself and went on a rampage. He believed that he was the missionary of God and should be considered the only king in the universe. That type of mindset was definitely not accepted by those in power. So, soon after he deemed himself as the king of the universe, he was chased down by the nation he resided in. That nation instantly sent out 3 God-class operators to kill him. In the end, he took a God-class operator down with him. It should be known that he was still only a domain realm master, at most a titled domain realm formidable warrior at that time. He definitely hadn't reached the imperial stage yet. Yet, being in the domain stage, he was still not any weaker than a God-class mecha operator piloting a God-class mecha. Of course, that was a special case. Normally, common domain realm masters were only qualified to go against ace operators. They definitely weren't on par against imperial operators, not to mention God-class operators. Only imperial stage domain realm masters could perhaps go against imperial operators, while only those who have entered the God realm were qualified to exchange blows with God-class operators. However, after centuries of research and careful observation, physical skills was clearly weaker than mecha operating on the same stage. If there was a fight between a physical skills user and mecha pilot of the same caliber, the loser of the fight would always be physical skills users. This was why mechas become the biggest trend in the universe. Unless a large group of these dimension domain realm masters appear, the statistics won't change too much. However, reality proved that the chance of obtaining the dimension domain concept was extremely small. In the history of the development of physical skills, there was only this one special case. After that dimension domain realm master died, there hadn't been a second one. Qilong's first reaction was understandable, as what the black-cloaked individual had shown could only be explained by the dimension domain concept. Right as Qilong was still judging the opponent's domain, the black-cloaked individual suddenly moved his cloak. An intense chill went up from Qilong's tailbone to his head. It was his instinct informing him that an unprecedented danger was approaching. Qilong didn't hesitate and used his hands to push the area around him forcefully. The space around him suddenly cracked open. The cracks were expanding limitlessly. Once the dimension crack breaks through Qilong's defenses, Qilong's entire body would be cut in half by it. When Qilong's domain concept and this odd domain concept clashed against one another, Qilong was instantly shaken by it. He could feel his blood rushing up to his mouth. In the end, he couldn't control himself and spat out a mouthful of blood. Although the crack was still expanding, the speed of it had decreased significantly. It seemed Qilong's defensive force was effective. However, if he couldn't completely stop it, the crack would still cut the space Qilong resided in half. Qilong would still die from it. He hadn't found Boss yet. He hadn't helped Boss take the world yet. How could he just die with all those regrets? Qi Long's unwillingness to give up and his anger towards God instantly expanded outwards. He roared loudly, "Get out of here!" Qi Long's entire aura began to expand greatly. The barrier that was limiting him from being a titled domain realm master was completely shattered by this force. Qi Long's domain concept wildly expanded outwards. The crack that was originally slowly expanding instantly stopped. No, not only did it stop, but it slowly closed up. In the end, the crack in the air completely disappeared. It was as though the terrifying scene hadn't happened just now. Facebook Twitter more. As expected. The black-cloaked individual actually spoke after seeing Qi Long's domain concept completely neutralizing his domain concept. After hearing that, Qi Long frowned. "You know me?" "Qi Long, son of Qi Yaoyang," said the black-cloaked individual calmly. It seemed he knew who he was attacking. "You know me very well." Qi Long's face was completely frozen. The "as expected" said by his opponent made him annoyed. Indeed. The black-cloaked individual didn't deny it. "Who are you really?" Qi Long stared at his opponent and asked again. Right as he finished, Qi Long had already attacked. Although he spoke with his opponent to try to get some information from his opponent, he still wished to land a surprise attack. "That's not going to work." The black-cloaked individual blocked with his right hand. Qi Long's domain concept was completely blocked off by the opponent's domain concept, stopping Qi Long from moving any nearer to him. "Disappear." Qi Long erupted with as much domain energy his body could exert. He decided to put his all into this one attack. Qi Long hadn't forgotten about Han Jijian. Although he didn't see Han Jijian in the space he was in, Qi Long still believed that Han Jijian was right beside him. It would be fine if Han Jijian was outside of this domain. He was just afraid that Han Jijian had also been attacked. If the enemy could send out a Dimension Element Domain Realm Master, then the others Domain Realm Masters that came with him weren't any weaker. Han Jijian, who was just in the pseudo-domain stage, would definitely be in a bad position if he were to face such enemies. Boss and some of his comrades were already unaccounted for, so he couldn't accept something happening to his friends in his presence. If that were to happen, he would actually go insane. Even if he was going to harm himself, he was still going to destroy the opponent's domain. He wanted to see with his eyes whether Han Jijian was alright or not. Bang! The two energies clashed into each other. The black-cloaked individual saw his domain on the verge of shattering because of Qi Long's burst of domain energy. He couldn't help but softly say, "This will be troublesome." Once the domain shatters, the energy of it would expand outwards. All of the commotion and noises will no longer be able to be cut off by him. If that happened, the entire base would know he was there. Ice Age. The shaking domain was suddenly reinforced by the ice element domain concept, stabilizing it until it was as sturdy as a mountain. Qi Long looked at the black-cloaked individual with shock as he sensed the familiar domain energy. Bibo Boss, the feeling of excitement he held in also had a hint of fear. He was afraid that he was wrong, and that this strong domain realm master wasn't actually Boss. Instead, he might be facing an unknown enemy who had two elements at his disposal. The black-cloaked individual slowly began to take off the hood. In the end, Ling Lan's expressionless face was seen by Qi Long. "Boss." Qi Long's eyes reddened as he pounced towards Ling Lan. He wanted to hug Boss. He wanted to tell him all of his worries and his excitement. Bang! In the next second, Qi Long was completely wrestled to the ground by Ling Lan. "Qi Long, I'm very disappointed in your performance." Ling Lan looked at Qi Long coldly. Coming here, she didn't want to see her friends with faces full of sadness, regret and tears. It could be said that Qi Long and Han Jijian's words and behavior on the roof had angered Ling Lan greatly. "That's why you can't leave me, boss. I'm still too weak. I need you to continue to train me," Qi Long replied shamelessly with an expression of an annoying leech. Just looking at that annoying expression made Ling Lan's teeth itch. "Don't lie to me. I know fully well what you're capable of." Ling Lan didn't believe Qi Long. "Letting you stay with Ling Tian is because I trust you can help me. I refuse." The intelligent Qi Long instantly understood Ling Lan's words. Boss didn't even think of taking him with him. Qi Long understood that Boss could not stay in the Federation for too long, with everyone trying to get a piece of what Ling Xiao left behind. They definitely wouldn't allow anything to stop them, and if Boss was added to the picture, it would screw over everyone's plan of snatching Ling Xiao's assets. Thus, Boss couldn't stay in the Federation even if he wanted to. But, he still wanted to leave with Boss. Even if they were to become rogues of the galaxy, he still would do so without any regrets. I will come back, said Ling Lan as she stared into Qi Long's eyes. I can't afford to lose my roots here in the Federation. I trust you, so please help me protect Ling Tian. Ling Lan's eyes were filled with trust. It was as if she was saying, because you are here, being my strongest shield, I can leave without worry and keep on going forward. When I become a king one day and rule the universe, I will come back to the Federation and take my revenge. Boss, King hate it when you say things like that, Qi Long suddenly swore. I will definitely do what you want me to do, but you also need to promise me that you will come back. I, Ling Lan, will never go back on my word. Ling Lan stood up and looked at Qi Long as she spoke one word at a time. Her weakness was only temporary. She would soon be the strongest there is and return here. She would pay back 100-fold for what her father's enemies had done to her family. Qi Long stood up with complicated feelings inside him. He thought he would follow Boss until the end of his life. Even if they were to have their own families, their relationship would not change at all. However, he didn't think that the separation would happen this quickly and that he couldn't refuse it either. If it was possible, Qi Long didn't want to stay in Ling Tian. If there was someone who could take up the mantle, he definitely would leave behind Ling Tian and go with Boss to the ends of the universe. Unfortunately, that was not possible. Out of all their friends, he was the most suitable for the position of the Ling Tian Independent Army's commander. It was just as his boss had said. Even if he were to leave the Federation, he shouldn't lose his roots, otherwise no matter how strong he was out there, he wouldn't get any help when he returned, rather he would be attacked by the whole Federation. Seeking revenge wasn't an easy thing at all. It's not as hard as you think out there. However here, it won't be easy to protect what we have. There will be a gruesome fight soon, and it'll all be on you, said Ling Lan after seeing Qi Long's depressed mood. After hearing that, Qi Long quickly regained his focus and asked, Boss, you're saying you're going to leave the Federation immediately? I will leave after I see my mother, replied Ling Lan. Boss, you're worried about Senior Colonel Lan. Qi Long realized now why his boss had appeared here. You want to hide within Ling Tian and go to Planet General together? Although this would be very dangerous, this is still my only option. Ling Lan believed the military headquarters would definitely monitor the Ling Tian Independent Army very strictly. That was because she would most likely contact them to return to Ling Tian. After arriving on Planet General, we will leave. You don't have to find us and just do what you need to do. Us? Is it Luo Lang, Xie Yi, and Li Lanfeng? Qi Long asked in excitement. It seemed that everyone was all right. Ling Lan was silent. That silence made Qi Long's smile slowly disappear. Who? Qi Long said painfully. After a short moment, Qi Long heard a soft voice in his ears, Xie Yi. 1293 2 cores. In the learning space, the 10 instructors, who were preventing the collapse of the learning space by stationing themselves in different corners of the space, felt the space finally turning stable. When they felt the space slowly stabilizing, they instantly breathed a sigh of relief. Suddenly, they heard Number 1 calling to them. They teared through the dimensions barrier and arrived where Number 1 was. Number 1 was in a secret room with a frown on his face. He was staring at two bright objects that were wrapped by countless bands of light with a deadpan expression. Number 9 couldn't hold in the worry in her heart and asked, Number 1, how's Majesty 4's condition? Very bad, replied Number 1 plainly. I'm using all the energy available in the learning space to repair his body, but it is still not enough. Plus, there's also a little leech that needs it as well, and we can't just leave him be either. The problem right now isn't only Little 4 and that little leech, Little Blossom. Number 5 appeared beside Number 9 with a cold expression on his face. The constant smug smile on his face was gone. Without the connection between Little 4 and Ling Lan, it will be difficult for us to obtain any energy from Ling Lan. The energy in the learning space is limited too. Once we use it all up, Little 4 and Little Blossom's recovery period will be dragged on indefinitely. Number 5 had a look of defeat on his face. They were all top-tier individuals in their star system, but they now were stuck here with nothing they could do about it. What actually happened this time? Said Number 7 frustratingly. He had been researching a legendary armor in his dimension when suddenly his entire dimension began to collapse. He immediately ran out, and before he could ask about what happened, he was tossed to a corner by Number 1. They used their spiritual power to protect the foundation of the collapsing learning space. After not eating and sleeping for 10 days, they finally felt the destructive energy against the space weakening and in the end stabilizing. After it stabilized, they could finally leave, come to number 1 and ask about what was happening. What else could it be? Majesty 4 wanted to save someone, but instead got hurt by the backlash, said number 4 in an annoyed tone. She quickly brushed up her flustered outer appearance. She couldn't accept appearing in front of others with a scruffy appearance. However, even so, she still felt her entire body smelled because she hadn't showered in 10 days. Although they were the type of existence that wouldn't be affected by something like that, she still wanted to immediately return to her own dimension and take a hot bath to get rid of the smell. Save who? Who was in trouble? Number 6, number 7 and number 8 were all confused. 3 similar confused expressions appeared on their faces, their expression incited hatred and laughter in the other instructors at the same time. Instructors 6, 7 and 8 were all considered to be individuals who focused on their own research. They wouldn't care about what happened in the outside world. Compared to the other instructors who would pay some attention to Ling Lan from time to time, these 3 would become disappointed when Ling Lan wasn't in the learning space. They wouldn't pay much attention to Ling Lan normally to avoid that feeling of disappointment. They didn't know that Ling Lan lived such a heart-wrenching and death-defying time during the past while. Ling Lan's father, Ling Xiao. They didn't know, but that didn't mean the others didn't know. Instructor number 2 suddenly appeared behind the 3 of them and answered in a depressing tone. What? That God-class operator? The 3 of them were utterly shocked. Majesty 4 was really digging his own grave. Number 6 looked to the sky with a speechless expression. Taking in the spiritual power of a God-class operator with his current strength, crazy. The result was definitely going to be a bang and an implosion. Majesty 4 failed right, guessed number 7, seeing that the learning space was still intact. That's right, but wrong at same time. This time, it was number 3 who answered. Number 3, when did you become so cryptic with your words? After hearing that answer, number 8 was annoyed. As a mecha operator, number 3 was the most straightforward one out of all of them. He would always say something and do it. He didn't think that such a straightforward person would become this annoying. I wasn't being straightforward. Number 3's eyes widened in shock, but he was speaking the truth. Number 8 was after all someone who dove deeply into underlying matter, so he quickly realized. You're saying he absorbed Ling Xiao's spiritual power? He asked again, wait, although spiritual power is freeform, there's a core. That core is an individual's spiritual power. Majesty 4 is still not able to take in the spiritual power core of a God-class operator yet. Are you saying the spiritual power he took in was just loose spiritual power that didn't have any consciousness in it? Or are you saying he absorbed the main core? Maybe he absorbed a part of the main core. But, can a core be split into pieces? According to our theories on Mandora, if the core splits, the spiritual entity would result in death. They would become like those loose spiritual energies, just energy with no life force and a core. Number 8 continued making conclusions out loud. However, this was an impossible conclusion in his mind. What if the spiritual entity had 2 cores? Number 5 was unusually nice as he tried to provide an explanation for the observation. How's that possible? Number 8 didn't even think about it and denied the possibility. Perhaps it was possible to awaken multiple innate talents, but there could only be one spiritual entity core. 2 cores. Just the fight between the 2 cores on who should be the main core would cause a person to either become insane or become an idiot. However, they had seen Ling Xiao before. He was definitely a cultured, warm and logical person. His spiritual power was also stable and it didn't seem to be shaky. He definitely didn't behave like someone who had 2 cores. Unfortunately, other than the 3 of them, the others had an expression of certainty on their faces. Number 8 wiped his face, alright, 2 cores. That's insane. So Majesty 4 successfully absorbed 1 core, but that core is still not something little 4 could take in all at once. Is that why the learning space is collapsing? Yes and no, replied number 3. In the next second, number 8 ruthlessly pounced towards number 3 with readied fists. Bang! Number 3 crossed his arms and blocked number 8's punch. He had a look of shock and said, "Why are you trying to hit me?" Number 8 said angrily, "God damn it. If you're going to say something, get straight to the point. I hate those types of ambiguous and not detailed answers." How was I being ambiguous? Number 3 felt that he was wrongly accused. He was just answering honestly and wasn't perfunctory in his words. Then can you explain for me what you mean by yes and no? Although he dealt with politics and spoke in an indirect manner every day, it didn't mean he liked being spoken to in that way. You were right about Majesty 4 successfully absorbing the core. But, you are wrong to say that it was the reason for the learning space collapsing. Number 3 could only explain nicely. There's another reason for the space collapsing. Number 8 didn't expect the situation to be this complicated. Then why aren't you telling me directly? You are just letting me blabber on mindlessly. I didn't plan to have you guess. I just said one sentence and you began to make your own conclusions, said number 3 with a wronged look on his face. He was already cooperating with number 8 so well, but why wasn't number 8 satisfied? Was it this difficult to be a nice older brother? Number 8 readied up his pale white fist again and was about to hit number 3. Number 3 thought about fighting back, but he looked at his own iron fist, that was twice as large as number 8's fist, and he decided not to hurt number 8 again, so he quickly replied before number 8 could start punching him, alright, I'll tell you. In reality, after taking in one spiritual power core, Majesty 4 discovered there was a second core. He didn't even think and tried to take in the second one, said number 3 after putting his words together slowly. Majesty 4 has gone F***king insane. After hearing those words, number 8 couldn't hold it in and swore. Not insane, just at that time, Majesty 4's only thought was to save Ling Xiao. He didn't think about the end result or the consequences. Number 3 was clearly more lenient towards little 4. So he failed to absorb the second core, then reacted by spitting it out. Number 8 guessed. If that was the case, then Majesty 4 wouldn't have been injured so severely, and Little Blossom wouldn't have been dragged into this mess and almost lose his life as well. What does this have anything to do with Little Blossom? Number 8 felt this situation was becoming more and more complicated. That's because the second core was devour, number 1 suddenly said. Devour? Devour. This time, not only was number 8 shocked, number 6 and 7 both screamed in shock with looks of surprise on their faces. All the other instructors looked at each other in unplanned unison. When they had found out the second core was devour, they were also similarly shocked. If they get caught by devour, none of them would be able to get out alive, turning into nutrients for devour. You know about the natural state of devour's energy. Once you touch it, you basically won't be able to escape it. You would instantly become devoured and become its nutrients, said number 3 with a look of fear on his face. If Majesty 4 had absorbed the devour core, he wouldn't have been able to escape from its clutches. The space collapsing is actually the result of that core sucking in the energy of the learning space. So Little Blossom made a move. Number 8 had an epiphany. If anything, only Little Blossom, who has a similar power, can go against that core. However, Little Blossom's devouring power wasn't as strong as the devour core. Luckily, Little 4 took the core into this space, giving Little Blossom a home field advantage. Number 3 smiled bitterly. However, even so, Little Blossom only pushed the devour core outside of the learning space. He was also injured from the backlash of the devour core. If number 1 hadn't come to his aid and held on to Little Blossom's last bit of spiritual power, Little Blossom might have completely vanished from this world. However, even so, whether the part of Little Blossom that is left can recover and reawaken is a different story. Little 4 was lucky that Little Blossom had saved him. Although a large amount of his energy was devoured, he still retained his main body. As long as he's given enough time, he should wake up, said number 1 calmly. This was the reason why they could save the learning space from collapsing. If Little 4 was injured to the same level as Little Blossom, the dimension they were in wouldn't be intact. Only the core part of the learning space would have been able to stay intact. That's good. Even though number 6, 7 and 8 knew everything was fine after their compatriots told them about it, they still had cold sweat after hearing about it. It turns out, they had actually just managed to escape death. However, the real problem isn't Little 4 or Little Blossom, number 1 frowned once again. Come with me. Number 1 used his hand and cut the space in front of him. He walked inside and the others followed him. They arrived at another room. This room had 2 light orbs. One, although bright, still felt somewhat odd. It was as though something was missing. The other fixture was dim and it looked as though it could be easily extinguished from a small draft of wind. Why are there 2 of them? Number 6 asked in surprise. He closed his eyes and felt the 2 light sources before pointing at the bright but odd light orb, that is General Ling Zhao's. Then what about the dim energy core? Yeah, although General Ling Zhao's core has a lot of life inside of it, it clearly has a part of it missing. It would even affect his awakening, causing him to never be able to reawaken in this lifetime. Instructor number 1 knew better than anyone about Little Four's saddened call of the term father, along with his resolve to not give up on the Devour Core even if it meant losing his life and having the entire learning space collapsing. The direction Majesty 4 was evolving towards wasn't a mechanical intelligent mainframe, but rather it was more towards a human being. Number 1 didn't know whether his path of evolution was good or bad. What was annoying to him was that Little Four preferred being an artificial intelligent human that could have emotions, make mistakes and become impulsive, rather than becoming a super mainframe that only knew right and wrong. As for the other one, it's probably Xia Yi's core, replied Number 1. It's possible when Majesty 4 took in Ling Zhao's spiritual power core, he got his while returning. Majesty 4. He didn't know when to stop. General Ling Zhao's core was already enough to destroy Little Four. Yet, he still didn't care about his life and took in another spiritual core. Did he think he was an animal that could put everything into his pouch? Wasn't he afraid he would explode? Number 7 felt helpless. If Majesty 4 kept doing this kind of stuff every day, wouldn't they have to fight with the god of death every day as well? Couldn't Little Four just let them live in peace? Unfortunately, Xia Yi's death was written in the stars. He couldn't escape from it. Majesty 4 saved him, but the Devour Core devoured all of his spiritual power. In the end, there is only a soul fragment of him left. Number 1 didn't think Xia Yi was going to survive this predicament. In reality, Xia Yi's spiritual power was already on the brink of completely disappearing. If Little Blossom had pushed out the Devour Core any slower, Xia Yi's spiritual power would be completely devoured without a single drop left. Although Little Blossom only has a part of him left, his main body is still Devour-based. Although the damage dealt to him was as great as Xia Yi's, he could just devour the energy around him to repair himself. It can be said that Little Blossom still had a chance to wake up, while Xia Yi. Not only was his soul fragment a problem, there is still leftover Devour energy inside his spiritual core. That small amount of Devour energy won't give him any chance to repair himself. Right now, I can only use my energy to hold back the Devour energy, stopping it from hurting Xia Yi's soul fragment any further. How about we increase the energy we give him? That way, even if a part of him was devoured, we still have a chance to replenish Xia Yi's soul fragment, Number 4 suggested in a confused tone. I already tried that. The more energy I give, the more it gets devoured, so the amount of energy left for Xia Yi is negligible. Not only that. Just take a look for yourselves. Number 1 wiggled his fingers and countless bands of light flowed towards Xia Yi's dim spiritual power core to replenish its energy. However, after the energy entered the core was still just as dim as before. Moreover, instead of brightening, the minute black dot in the center of the core started expanding, causing the core to seem even dimmer than before. That's Devour energy. Number 4 covered her mouth and gasped in shock. Number 1 flicked his finger again, stopping the flow of energy. No matter how much I give him, it doesn't replenish him, instead, my energy nourishes the Devour energy, Number 1 said helplessly. Looking at the growing black dot, there was almost zero chance of Xia Yi surviving this predicament. Is there really no hope? Number 3, who treated Ling Lan as his own daughter, couldn't bear the thought of Ling Lan becoming sad from losing a friend. Number 9 also felt the same way. Whether Xia Yi can have any hope of surviving would depend on Little Blossom. Number 1 sighed as he remembered Little Blossom's unknown fate. If Little Blossom couldn't wake up, then Xia Yi couldn't survive too. Only Little Blossom, who also had a similar type of Devour energy, could perhaps help solve this seemingly impossible problem. After hearing Number 1 being pessimistic about the Xia Yi's fate, all the 8 other instructors sighed. They already couldn't determine Little Blossom's life or death, not to mention Xia Yi. It's just that we can't contact Ling Lan. That is the real problem. Number 9's steeled look had a hint of worry. It will all depend on Ling Lan now, said Number 1 plainly. Without Little Four, even if the instructors had immense strength, they still wouldn't be able to open the learning space with the restriction the learning space placed on them. However, as the host, even without Little Four, as long as Ling Lan's spiritual power was strong enough, she would be able to open a path to the learning space. In reality, it was all on Ling Lan on whether Little Four could recover and whether Little Blossom could wake up. If Ling Lan couldn't open a path to the learning space wouldn't be able to siphon any energy from Ling Lan. If this state of energy absence continued for too long, then the instructors would be out of energy and fall into a state of hibernation. If that happened, Little Four and Little Blossom would never recover. All the instructors knew that the future of everyone in this room was all in Ling Lan's control. Try your best, Ling Lan. Number 9 clenched her fists tighty. The child she taught definitely would not disappoint her. Don't worry. Ling Lan's our most prized disciple, unless number 2 was selfish enough to not teach all the spiritual power techniques to Ling Lan. Number 5 glanced at the shadowy area beside number 1 with a smirk on his face. After hearing those words, all the instructors looked towards that shadow. Perhaps their gazes were too fiery. Number 2, who was usually calm and collected, could hold it in anymore. He slowly crawled out of the shadow and said calmly, I've taught what should be taught. What shouldn't be taught? Everyone raised their eyebrows and waited for him to finish his sentence. Number 2's cold-looking expression had a bit of disheveled look to it. I also taught. After saying that, he went back into the shadow. He didn't want to show himself again. Number 1 looked at the surprised faces on everyone. He knew that if he didn't explain it clearly, these people wouldn't leave. Thus he said, Ling Lan is known for being pushy. No matter if it was for herself or when training others. Everyone understood what he meant. They all had lessons they didn't want to teach to Ling Lan, but when such a hard-working child studied under them with a fiery thirst for knowledge, they could only relent and teach her everything they knew. They didn't expect number 2, who was cold and not a people person, to not be able to hold against Ling Lan's pushiness. They also realized number 2 was actually not that different from them when it came to matters about Ling Lan. At the spaceport of Planet General, a gigantic destruction devil slowly docked itself. At the same time, the news of Ling Tian Independent Army's high-ranking officers arriving on Planet General was sent to all the departments within the government of Planet General. Reporting in, sir. Ling Tian Independent Army's vice commander, brigade leaders, and department heads have arrived on Planet General. The Flying Dragon Special Forces also received the news. Ling Xiao lifted his head and monotonously spoke to the adjutant who came in to report Ling Tian's arrival. Got it. After acknowledging the adjutant, he lowered his head and continued to read through the documents in his hands. Recently, Ling Xiao had been restructuring the Flying Dragon Special Forces. The relaxed and indolent atmosphere in the Flying Dragon Special Forces was long gone. Every department and every battle team were like standing strands of hair, being constantly on standby. The adjutant saw that his chief was busy, so he didn't dare to disrupt him any further. He softly walked out of the chief's office. After the automatic door closed behind him, he breathed in a huge breath of air. Recently, the pressure the chief was exerting was getting heavier and heavier. In the past, he would still dare to crack a few jokes with the chief when the chief wasn't busy. Now, he would feel more suffocated the longer he stayed with the chief. It was possible that General Ling Xiao's death had changed the chief. The adjutant had always been Ren Feiyu's confidant. He knew very well that the chief was a classmate who grew up together with General Ling Xiao. Although they competed against each other and didn't see eye to eye, the relationship between them was very good. The chief was definitely thinking about taking revenge for the general. It was probably why he changed his reactionary attitude into something more proactive, like ruthlessly restructuring the Flying Dragon Special Forces. As the adjutant of the chief of the Flying Dragon Special Forces, he definitely supported the chief's decision. As the strongest special forces in the entire galaxy, he had always been proud of being a member of the Flying Dragon Special Forces. However, in the past few years, the Flying Dragon Special Forces had been slowly rotting from the inside. Politics was slowly incorporated into every matter of the Federation, the brigade leaders didn't trust anyone, and the other team's leaders were forming their own factions, splitting the whole special forces into small segmented pieces. Looking at the current deteriorated state of the Flying Dragon Special Forces was making him depressed. He had reported this deteriorated state to the chief in the past, but the chief chose to place his trust in the brigade leaders, trusting that they could resolve the matter themselves. However, by placing his trust in them, in the last 10 or so years, nothing had a turn for the better, not to mention the unresolved problems. It was instead becoming worse and worse. After seeing hope of turning the Flying Dragon Special Forces for the better, he was in full support of the chief's reform. He hoped this could relight the fire burning inside of the Flying Dragon Special Forces. He wanted to see the Flying Dragon Special Forces returning back to their rightful throne. The adjutant clenched his fists until veins were popping from his arms with an excited look on his face. He admired the chief even more now. It felt like his entire body was filled with strength. This was the version of the chief that he had sworn an oath to serve. His chief had finally returned. After the doors closed, Ling Xiao raised his head with his right hand softly covering half of his face. He had a devilish smile on his face. All the actors are on the stage. The show is about to start. Qi Yaoyang, don't disappoint me. At that moment, at General Ling Zhao's manor, a few important members of the upper echelons of the 23 RD Division's departments came to visit. The person leading the group was the 23 RD Division's Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General He Shuyang. The guard took He Shuyang and the others into a living room to wait. After a short while, Lan Luofeng walked into the living room with a clean-cut uniform. "Madam." All the officers immediately stood up and saluted Lan Luofeng. "No need for greetings. Everyone, please sit." Lan Luofeng gestured for everyone to sit and speak freely. After all the officers sat down, He Shuyang spoke up, "Madam, we have already made the preparations. In the military headquarters conference 3 days from now, we will recommend Lieutenant General Ling to take over the position of the General of the 23rd Division. Please get ready by then." Lan Luofeng nodded and said, "I've already notified the First Marshal. There should not be any problems from his side. However, how we can make the Second Marshal and Third Marshal factions representatives agree will depend on everyone's hard work." After hearing that the First Marshal's faction was dealt with, He Shuyang felt relieved. When they first brought up this suggestion, he was afraid the First Marshal would disagree. The political pressure the First Marshal could exert was much greater than that from the Second and Third Marshals. The officers, who were moved by such good news, began to have a heated discussion about the ways they could deal with the Second Marshal and the Third Marshal's faction. While they were discussing, Lan Luofeng just listened there silently. She wasn't as knowledgeable about the internal workings in the military headquarters, so she didn't want to say anything wrong that could derail the officers' thought processes. After more than an hour of discussing, everyone knew what each of them needed to do. Then they all said their goodbyes to Lan Luofeng. The reason they came to the general's manor to discuss their plan was because they had no other options. In order to avoid the 23rd Division from grouping together, the military headquarters had stopped them from controlling the 23rd Division. They were ordered to not leave their post without any orders from the military headquarters. These officers, who were constantly under surveillance, could only wait until they came to Planet General using the reason to visit Lan Luofeng to discuss their future plans. Their reasoning was too valid to be refused by the military headquarters. If coming to visit the grieving wife of a general who had passed away was stopped by the military headquarters, they would definitely be shamed by the public once the news got out. Although the military headquarters wanted to force the 23rd Division under their rule, they still didn't want to anger all of the soldiers in the military and their citizens. Not only was the 23rd Division under the military headquarters surveillance and restrictions, all of the brigade leaders and department heads of Ling Tian on Planet General were also ordered to stay on their destruction devil, unless they were called upon. Otherwise, they weren't allowed to leave the spaceport. Of course, these orders were mostly restricting the higher-ranking officers. If the average soldier wanted to leave the area, it was still possible. In reality, the cost of maintaining the large number of soldiers was huge. They had to frequently go into Planet General to resupply their stock. This meant that sometimes they would need to go out of the Destruction Devil to buy their supplies. The military headquarters was still quite reasonable in this aspect. They only required Ling Tian to give them a list of the logistics personnel going out to purchase supplies. Once the military headquarters determined that there was no issue with the candidates, they would let them out to resupply. However, compared to male logistics personnel, those JMC female soldiers clearly got out of the spaceport much easier. As long as the list of their names was sent out, it would be approved after a short while. Sometimes, to avoid the troublesome procedure, some easy restocking assignments would be given to those beautiful and elegant JMCs. On this day, around a dozen female JMCs were given the task to buy some everyday essentials. They took the interplanetary transport and reached the capital of Planet General. In order to increase the speed of their shopping, they split into groups of 3 and went to buy what they were assigned to buy. Everyone promised to gather at the interplanetary transport station at 5 in the afternoon and then went their separate ways. When all of the female soldiers had left, one of the guards, who was standing in the plaza, pressed on his ear canals and said softly, "Ling Tian's JMCs have split into groups of 3. There doesn't seem to be any problems currently." "Understood. We've already arranged people to follow them." The person he was reporting to didn't seem to be less cautious as he still sent out the next wave of men under his command to monitor these JMCs. Most of the JMCs who came out today were quite beautiful. Of course, the most beautiful young girl was around 18 years old. She looked like a new recruit who had just joined not long ago. Out of the girls moving together with her, one was around the same age, or even younger. She was a little girl with a sweet smile on her face. The last one was somewhat older, she looked like she was in her early 20s. Although her looks were average, the aura she gave off was still calm and collected. She was probably the leader out of the three of them. It was probably the first time the two younger female soldiers had gone to such a luxurious plaza. They constantly had curious expressions on their faces as they walked around. If the oldest of the three of them didn't constantly remind them not to run off randomly, they probably would have just stayed in a shop they liked for hours and hours. However, no matter how well they behaved and how much they tried to stop themselves, there was always a limit. When they saw those branded limited edition clothes, shoes and bags, they couldn't control themselves anymore. They pulled the oldest of the three in with them to shop. Not long after, in the crowd, an average person walked to a corner. He looked at the limited edition luxury goods as he said softly into his communicator, "The group I followed entered into the luxury shop in the Shihang district. It seems like they won't come out for a while," said the man from the other side of the communicator. "Looks like this group should be clean." "Looks normal for now," said the person in the corner softly. He was pretending to look at the scenery, but in reality, his attention was still on the shop. The three girls were looking through the beautiful dresses and clothes at that moment. They would speak to one another from time to time. They were probably discussing which one of the dresses looked better. "Can you determine the number of people following us?" asked Li Lanfeng softly while disguising himself as the oldest of the three JMCs. He took a dress off the rack and placed it in front of Luo Lang. "That person in the corner looking at the scenery and the couple who just entered the shop," Luo Lang said as he shook his head, showing that he didn't like the long dress Li Lanfeng was showing him. "Not only that, this shop has surveillance cameras. They probably have already been temporarily taken over by the military headquarters," said Ling Lan as she looked through dresses. The reason the three of them were speaking out loud was because the words the surveillance cameras could pick up was different from what they were saying. The surveillance cameras could only hear words like, "This dress is pretty. It suits you, doesn't it? Oh no, I don't like that one," or "You don't like it. That one's nice though." This effect was caused by infusing spiritual power in their words. It was a technique Ling Lan learned from instructor number 2. In order to make their mission convenient, Ling Lan quickly taught Li Lanfeng and Luo Lang the technique. It was good that Li Lanfeng was already an expert in spiritual power, so he didn't have much problems trying to learn it. Luo Lang on the other hand, how could his spiritual power not be strong when he had an infinite number of personalities to help him with it? Additionally, his calm personality was like a cheat code. Even if the main Luo Lang couldn't learn it, the calm personality would still be able to learn it easily and transfer his newfound knowledge into Luo Lang. Ling Lan believed that in this current era, no one could break the cryptic code that originated from Mandora. "They are really serious about monitoring us." Luo Lang snorted coldly. His beautiful face had a hint of mockery. He didn't think that even after fighting for the Federation with their lives, they would be considered as enemies in the end. "They are just being careful." Ling Lan had a cute smile on her face. She looked like she was saying that the dress in her hands was very beautiful. "It's rather because you and General Ling Xiao did such a good job in growing Ling Tian and the 23rd Division to what they are today. All of them want to take a bite of them." Li Lanfeng's words were right on point. Only someone incapable would admire the assets of others. Ling Lan laughed coldly. "Commander, you're wrong." Li Lanfeng smirked lightly. Ling Lan raised her eyebrows in response. Her supposed sharp look now looked different on her cute and adorable face. Li Lanfeng quickly shifted his gaze. The ears under his military cap were already red from blushing. He coughed and added in a somewhat hoarse voice, "Those who sit in high positions aren't incapable. It's just that you and General Ling Xiao are too amazing. That's why they seem so average." Luo Lang looked at Li Lanfeng in admiration. This was definitely the best possible way to praise someone. It wasn't a standard way of praise too. He should learn how to do it from him. Li Lanfeng's words indeed made Ling Lan feel much better. At that moment, the couple walked into the shop and like them, they were looking at clothes. Li Lanfeng gave a look to Luo Lang. Luo Lang then said, "We're almost done looking through the clothes here. Why don't we go upstairs and take a look?" Ling Lan's eyes brightened and immediately said, "Okay, okay." Ling Lan acted perfectly like an average girl who just wanted to see more of the luxurious brand name products in the shop. Plus, Ling Lan's cute and adorable look made her behavior seem much more natural. She didn't even annoy those young masters and young mistresses from special backgrounds with her behavior. The three of them quickly went up to the second floor. While they were doing so, the couple sent glances at each other. They put away the luxury products they had in their hands and followed Ling Lan and the others up to the second floor. This luxury store had a total of 5 floors. There were elevators and also automatic escalators. Ling Lan and the others didn't go to the second floor but instead went straight to the top floor. The couple also followed them to the 5th floor. The 5th floor was filled with expensive and luxurious jewelry. Surprisingly, it was relatively empty compared to the other floors. Although the couple was slower than Ling Lan's group by 1 or 2 minutes, they still managed to find them after going around the floor. They quickly let out a sigh of relief after finding them. Ling Lan and the others were carefully looking through the jewelry and precious stones in the display case. It was as though they were entranced by the jewelry as they were stuck there for 15 or so minutes. The couple both frowned at their suspicious actions. They were looking at the display case for too long. The woman nudged the man her arm a little and the man took her over. They were pretending to go over to choose some jewelry from the display case. The woman let go of the man and then moved to the side of Li Lanfeng on her left. Li Lanfeng seemed to have noticed her. He turned his face towards her before flashing her with a large smile. So, beautiful. The woman could feel her eyes being dazzled. Li Lanfeng's seemingly average face was instantly warped into the most beautiful face in the world because of that smile. She was entranced by it. It gave her the impulse of kneeling down towards him. Suddenly, she felt alarm bells going off in her head. She didn't hesitate and bit her tongue. She wanted to use the immense pain to force herself awake. Too late, Li Lanfeng smiled. He was waiting for them to come for 15 minutes. He was almost losing his patience. Right as Li Lanfeng finished speaking, the woman suddenly felt everything in front of her turning pitch black. The lights along with the jewelry she had seen shining brightly all vanished. There was only darkness in her vision. It was as though the scene she saw earlier was a dream. The man saw his partner suddenly turning stiff. He gave her an odd look, but in the next second his expression changed. Right as he was about to scream, he discovered that he couldn't make a single noise. Your opponent is me. Don't get distracted. Luo Lang had already activated his domain when they got close to them. He was just waiting for them to come towards him. The man suddenly discovered that his partner, who was standing not so far from him, was suddenly gone. Not only that, even the entire store was gone and only a gray-colored sky was left. There was also a beautiful young woman smiling at him. Just the smile made his heart jump, but it also gave him a chill down his spine. If there was a third person there, they would have discovered that Ling Lan, who was standing between Luo Lang and Li Lanfeng, had long left. At that moment, Ling Lan had already left the luxurious shop and was rushing towards the general's manor. It was also lucky that Ling Lan was already an Imperial Realm formidable warrior. Her amazing control of her domain concept didn't alarm the Imperial stage experts guarding Planet General. Of course, she didn't know whether she could get past Mu Shuiqing, who was guarding the general's manor. However, Ling Lan knew that even if Mu Shuiqing discovered her presence, he wouldn't do anything as long as she didn't have any malice towards the people in the general's manor. Ling Zhao's disappearance was enough to disappoint Mu Shuiqing in the Federation. That was why he wouldn't be alerting the military headquarters if an Imperial Realm formidable warrior appeared on Planet General. In the general's manor, the originally dry air became somewhat humid. Of course, this degree of change was too hard to detect, unless it was someone who was extremely sensitive to humidity. Otherwise, no one would be able to tell the difference. Mu Shuiqing, who had been in garden watering plants, suddenly raised his head and frowned. In the next second, he disappeared from where he stood. In the corridor to the study room, a large hand suddenly appeared out of thin air and ruthlessly grabbed an area of empty air. Suddenly, a light screen shattered and in the next second a black-cloaked individual appeared out of thin air. Who are you? The large hand ruthlessly ripped open the dimension and Mu Shuiqing stepped out from the opening. Master, long time no see, Ling Lan raised her head. Mu Shuiqing stared at her with a cold look on his face. He grabbed Ling Lan and said, "Follow me." Ling Lan didn't resist and before she knew it she was taken to the backyard by Mu Shuiqing. "What are you doing here?" asked Mu Shuiqing. "Something happened to my father. I wanted to see my mother to check if she is safe. That way I will be able to leave without worrying too much," Ling Lan said respectfully. "The entire general's manor, other than here, isn't safe," said Mu Shuiqing in a dark tone. How could the military headquarters just let the general's manor off the hook? This was a place that Ling Lan would definitely appear. The military headquarters didn't dare to do anything to the holy place Mu Shuiqing stayed at. This was why Mu Shuiqing instantly grabbed Ling Lan and pulled her to this location. The military headquarters really don't care about saving face anymore. After shamelessly plotting against my father, they still used every method they could think of to steal what's his. A hint of mockery was shown on Ling Lan's face. She already knew that the general's manor would be monitored, but didn't expect they would even monitor the insides of the manor. It's because what you and your father left behind are too valuable. They don't want to let go of either one, said Mu Shuiqing calmly. In reality, if Ling Xiao hadn't been here, he would have left the Federation long ago. People who lived as long as Mu Shuiqing had already seen through everything possible in life. Weren't those who say those patriotic words just competing for power? Mu Shuiqing only listened to their sweet nothings and accepted it all. What my father and I left behind isn't theirs to obtain. Plus, it won't be easy to take what's ours, said Ling Lan coldly. She had always kept trump cards at the back of her hands. She didn't believe that her father, who was 100 times more sly and devious than her, would not leave any traps behind. You know your father very well. Mu Shuiqing looked at Ling Lan with an odd expression. He, of course, knew Ling Xiao very well. It was because he taught Ling Xiao for so many years which had allowed him to see through the real personality Ling Xiao had hid away. Although Ling Xiao returned for 7 to 8 years, he still only stayed with Ling Lan for at most 3 months. Most of the time, Ling Xiao and Ling Lan would be busy doing their own matters. In such a short time, Ling Lan actually managed to see Ling Xiao's true personality, and this shocked Mu Shuiqing. No one knows a child better than their parents. These words work in reverse as well, said Ling Lan indifferently. The important thing was that her father had never hid anything from her or her mother. Her mother didn't care because in her eyes, her father was always the best. As for Ling Lan, she wanted to ignore those matters as well, but her profound insight wouldn't stop activating in the presence of her father. It would always remind her of things she missed, making it so that she couldn't even neglect it. If you know your parents well, then why did you come back? Mu Shuiqing had an expression of disapproval. I want to see my mother with my own eyes. I just can't stop worrying. After losing Ling Xiao, Ling Lan felt she had lost a safeguard in her life. If something were to happen to Lan Luofeng, Ling Lan was afraid she'd go insane. In the end, Ling Lan becoming stronger in this lifetime was only to protect the people she loved. The first person she wanted to protect was her mother, Lan Luofeng. If you want her to be safe, you just need to make sure you're safe, Mu Shuiqing said calmly. You're now her pillar of hope. As long as you're alive, she would try her best to stay alive in order to protect your belongings. Ling Lan's eyes narrowed, the 23rd Division. Mu Shuiqing sighed. Despite it being very difficult, no one probably would be able to stop her from doing what she wants. I don't know what the final outcome will be, but I can confirm that your father's 23rd Division won't be taken by anyone else soon. But, if you want to take over the 23rd Division, then you need to become stronger as soon as possible. You must become powerful to the point where the 3 marshals cannot stop you from inheriting what's rightfully yours. I understand. It seems like I still have to trouble you, master, for the next few years. With her master within the general's manor, she trusted that no one would dare lay a hand on her mother. This was why Ling Lan and Ling Xiao dared to leave Lan Luofeng on Planet General by herself. Compared to the other generals' wives who were on Planet General like hostages, Lan Luofeng had Mu Shuiqing protecting her, allowing the two of them to be free of worry. If a God Realm individual wanted to protect someone, the person wouldn't die unless they instantly destroy the entire planet. No matter. I'm all by myself. It's not bad to be able to retire here anyways, Mu Shuiqing said nonchalantly. He only had one disciple he loved. Oh, well there was also Ling Lan. However, Ling Lan was also Ling Xiao's daughter. All in all, his entire life was spent on this family. He couldn't leave even if he wanted to. Ling Lan wanted to say something else. Suddenly, she trembled as she slowly turned towards the door. She saw a beautiful woman with a surprised look on her face. The woman had tears of joy as she ran towards her. I asked for your mother to come here just now. It is safe meeting her here. Mu Shuiqing's words echoed in Ling Lan's ears, as he explained why Lan Luofeng would appear here. Is it my little Lan'er? My Lan'er? Lan Luofeng caressed Ling Lan's face with trembling hands. Despite Ling Lan wearing a uniform of a JMC, Lan Luofeng was still able to recognize Ling Lan. It was her little baby daughter Ling Lan who she had been thinking about non-stop recently. I'm sorry, Mom. Ling Lan knelt down and held on to Lan Luofeng's waist. If she had just been stronger, she wouldn't have caused her father's disappearance by forcing him to save her life. Ling Lan didn't want to use the word death. She believed that man, who was stronger than God himself, wouldn't die. She could only accept that he had disappeared, just like many years before. When the time was right, he would come back again in full force. Don't apologize to me. If Ling Xiao didn't go to save you and if you were the one who disappeared instead of him, I would have hated him for all eternity. It's good that he went to save you. I'm very happy that I didn't marry the wrong man. I'm very proud of him. Lan Luofeng hugged Ling Lan tightly. She smiled as she spoke with tears trickling uncontrollably down her face. Ling Lan, don't blame your mother for being selfish. Back then when he first disappeared, if you hadn't existed, I would have joined him in death. However, your existence made me become a strong mother. In those 16 years, my focus was on you. In my mind, you were the most important. I was indeed happy when your father returned, but I was more happy that my daughter no longer needed to struggle and could recover her real identity as a girl. You would have been able to freely live in the gender you were born with. However, your father's blunder destroyed my dreams. To be honest, I hated your father back then. I hated the fact that he came back and messed with my plans. The reason why I forgave your father was because I saw that you liked this type of life. You don't need anyone to pamper you anymore. You wish to be strong enough to look down at everything. That's the type of freedom you needed, not what I planned out for you. That's why out of the two of you, if I was to choose, I would choose you. It's always been you. Lan Luofeng hugged her daughter tightly in her arms. The warmth she felt in her arms soothed her struggling heart. Ling Xiao's disappearance did indeed make her feel hurt. However, it was only some pain in her heart. However, if her daughter were to disappear instead of Ling Xiao, she would feel like someone was pulling her heart out. That kind of pain would make her suffocate. She would not be able to live anymore with that kind of pain. Mom! Ling Lan buried herself in Lan Luofeng's arms while she noiselessly sobbed. She had once said that she would never cry again, but she was unable to control her emotions when she heard her mother's heartwarming words. The more Lan Luofeng put importance on her, the more Ling Lan felt she had wronged her mother, as she had caused her mother to lose the husband that loved her the most. I'm not worried anymore after seeing you're safe. Now, you go do whatever you need to do. Don't worry about me. I'm not that delicate. I will definitely watch you return with a smile. Lan Luofeng knew why Ling Lan had appeared here. A mother knew her daughter best, and Lan Luofeng knew Ling Lan very well. Before Ling Lan said anything, she spoke the words Ling Lan needed to hear to ease her about leaving. Mom, I don't know when I will be back. But, I can assure you this, no matter who tells you that I've died, or disappeared, don't believe any of them. I will definitely come back alive. I will take revenge for father one step at a time. Ling Lan's gaze hardened and a killing intent poured out for a moment. Yes, yes, I'll believe you. I promise you that I will only trust your words. Even if your father comes back from the dead and tells me that you have died, I won't believe him. Lan Luofeng nodded with tears flowing out of her eyes. The tears that had originally stopped began trickling down her face. She hugged Ling Lan even tighter. She knew that once she let go, her little Lanner would leave her side and leave the Federation. She would go on an unknown journey in the stars filled with dangers and hardships. However, Ling Lan needed to go on that journey. Lanner needed to take revenge for her father. To achieve that, she needed to have space to freely develop herself and grow stronger, but the Federation wouldn't give her that space. What awaited her in the Federation were only traps and plots against her until she died from one of them. This temporary separation was only for a better future. Lan Luofeng knew that, but knowing she actually had to separate with her daughter made her feel reluctant. She almost succumbed to the urge of asking Ling Lan to take her with her. Slowly, Lan Luofeng let go of Ling Lan and backed away. She couldn't let herself be a burden to her daughter. In the end, she was just an average person. She couldn't protect herself in the face of danger. She couldn't endanger her daughter's life just for her sake. Lan Luofeng couldn't leave. Ling Lan was already considered to be missing from action, no one knew where she was and no one could find her. However, taking Lan Luofeng with her would make things different. Once they leave Planet General, the Federation would be able to predict the paths they could take to escape and easily set out ambushes to take them out both together. The most important factor in her decision was that she couldn't let the 23rd Division, which Ling Xiao had poured his heart and soul into, become some political leverage of others. She needed to protect what Ling Xiao had left behind. Just like how she protected the military merits Ling Xiao had for Ling Lan back then. She was a selfish woman. She never had any patriotic thoughts. She was just a normal family woman in the end. No one should even think about taking anything away from her family. She was stubborn like that. Lanner, don't say goodbye. When I turn around, you should go what you need to do, said Lan Luofeng as she gritted her teeth. She was afraid that if Ling Lan said goodbye to her, she wouldn't be able to control her emotions. She might just lose control of herself, holding on to her daughter and crying while telling her to take her along with her. Ling Lan stood there like a statue. Her mouth moved but in the end, no sound came out. She knew that just like her, she wouldn't have been able to turn around and leave if it wasn't for Lan Luofeng's approval. Lan Luofeng turned around quickly as tears dripped down like a waterfall. She hated the Federation. She hated the three marshals. She hated the military headquarters. She lost her husband because of them. And now, she must endure the separation between her and her daughter. Lan Luofeng had been full of optimism towards the world in the past. No matter what happened, she would always look on the positive side of things. However now, she had completely lost that optimistic point of view. When Lan Luofeng turned around, Ling Lan sent a pleading glance towards Mu Shuiqing. After Mu Shuiqing gave her a determined nod, her body slowly evaporated before slowly turning nothing but air. After a few seconds, Lan Luofeng heard Mu Shuiqing sigh. She's gone. Lan Luofeng quickly turned around. When she saw the area where Ling Lan knelt down empty, she covered her mouth with her hand and sobbed softly. The mother of the strong must endure pain that normal mothers can't endure. Mu Shuiqing slowly closed his eyes as he comforted Lan Luofeng. No matter if it was the wife of the strong or the mother of one, they were both difficult to be. But, Lan Luofeng played both roles. It was destined that her life would be full of difficulties. Lan Luofeng slowly stopped sobbing. She silently stared at the ground for a few seconds. When she raised her head again, her aura slowly changed into something similar to Ling Xiao and Ling Lan's aura. She slowly raised her right hand and gently pushed the strands of her hair behind her ear. That's right. My own battle is about to begin. I can't bring shame to the two of them. She looked towards Mu Shuiqing and said softly, Master, I'm leaving. Mu Shuiqing nodded. Lan Luofeng bowed towards him and then slowly walked out of the garden. Lan Luofeng's footsteps were calm. Each step wasn't hurried. She slowly walked forward until she disappeared from sight. Mu Shuiqing opened his eyes and looked towards the path leading to the garden. He then sighed. Ling Xiao, what have you done to deserve such a good wife by your side? With such a good daughter-in-law like her, he couldn't let anything happen to her. Otherwise, he would bring shame to the request Ling Xiao had asked of him before going into war and the Ling Lan's plea with her eyes before she left. After leaving the general's manor, Ling Lan quickly moved towards the commercial street. Li Lanfeng and Luo Lang were there drawing the attention of the people following them. She hoped that when she returned, they hadn't been exposed yet. Many of the other generals' manors were around there, so this area was considered a high-ranking official district. Other than patrol teams that patrolled the area from time to time, there were also only a few relatives coming in and out of the place. But, rarely, would there be outsiders coming in and out of this area. The entire district's streets and roads were very quiet with not a single soul in sight. When Ling Lan was about to leave this district just with a few dashes and arrive at the commercial street, she stopped. She stood there and turned to look at the tree on her left. I expected no less out of General Ling Zhao's son. A black-cloaked man suddenly appeared on top of a tree with a mask covering half of his face. You're flattering me, Ling Lan said calmly. She raised her head and turned towards another direction as she continued, if you're here, then why are you still hiding? After she finished speaking, another black-cloaked man appeared on a tree branch on her right. He was sitting on the branch languidly while swinging his legs on the tree. What? Do I need to point you out one by one? Ling Lan laughed coldly after only seeing one of them appear. Alright, we can't fool you. The black-cloaked man sitting on the branch clapped his hands and smiled. Since we are found out, everyone come out and meet Lieutenant General Ling. After he finished talking, another two black-cloaked men appeared on the two trees. One was leaning on it while the other was laying down on the tree branch. How did you know I'm here? Ling Lan didn't believe that they had been here waiting for her. The men who came here didn't plan on hiding anything. The man sitting on the branch opened his hand and a pendulum-like item suddenly dropped out of his hand. He shook the pendulum and smiled. This is the newest toy the military headquarters research facility has invented. It can track a domain realm master's domain concept energy. It's just so we manage to track your energy. Ling Lan's eyes narrowed instantly. She was now very worried about Li Lanfeng and Luo Lang. She was worried whether they had been discovered by the military headquarters. It was really a coincidence. We really didn't expect a lieutenant general such as yourself to change your name and gender to sneak your way past here, continued the man sitting on the branch. Another thing, seeing that you are safe and sound, why don't you report back to the military headquarters? Could it be just like what our brigade leader said? That something was off with General Ling Zhao's death. Ling Lan frowned slightly. She was trying to guess what faction these people came from. Although the words he said weren't of bad intentions, it even revealed that they were on her father's side, but could she really trust them? Her father had been in the military for many years. Although there were many who wanted to help him, there were also many who wanted nothing but to drag him down his pedestal. Maybe they were lowering her guard to catch her by surprise. However, if there was something off with General Ling Zhao's death, you running like this isn't a way to solve anything. No matter what, you must return to the military headquarters and explain everything. You should place your trust in the Federation and the military headquarters, said the black-cloaked man. Ling Lan looked at the man with a steeled gaze. She wasn't moved by his words. Ever since her father disappeared, she no longer trusted anyone from the Federation. She only trusted herself. Alright, our brigade leader knows that you have your doubts about the military headquarters. It's fine if you don't want to go, but our brigade leader wants to see you. The black-cloaked man could only compromise when he saw Ling Lan's determined attitude. He seemed to already have predicted Ling Lan's attitude towards this matter. Ling Lan still looked at him coldly and didn't answer him. Seriously, it was all predicted by our brigade leader. The black-cloaked man helpless pulled on the mask that blocked half of his face. Our brigade leader wants me to remind you that when you first activated your battle team back when you first joined the military, there was an exam that he had arranged at your father's request. He's a friend that your father trusts the most. Ling Lan's eyes narrowed slightly. Flying Dragon Special Forces. She had heard from her father that back in the day during her evaluation to activate her battle team, one of the two assessments was against Qi Yaoyang and the other assessment was against the Flying Dragon Special Forces. Qi Yaoyang was Qi Long's father and was the general of the 13th Division. He definitely wasn't some brigade leader. The only possibility could be the Flying Dragon Special Forces. She had once heard from Mu Chaoran and Tang Ningyu that the Flying Dragon Special Forces functions in brigades. This brigade leader must be from the Flying Dragon Special Forces. Clap. 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 The black-cloaked man clapped his hands. Lieutenant General Ling is really a once-in-a-century prodigy. You immediately guessed our identity. Indeed, our Flying Dragon Special Forces brigade leader would like to have a meeting with you. Although the Flying Dragon Special Forces don't have a say in the military headquarters decisions making, we still have the power to look over it. As long as there is something off with General Ling Zhao's death, our brigade leader said he would definitely speak to our chief and bring justice for General Ling Zhao. However, all of this requires you, Lieutenant General, to tell us the truth. Otherwise, our brigade leader wouldn't be able to help General Ling Zhao. The man in the black cloak signed. Ever since his brigade leader told him, he had also been indignant at the military headquarters. It was just that he was only just an insignificant member of the Black Ops. What could he have done? It was good that his brigade leader was also upset about the situation around Ling Zhao. If they had Ling Lan's help, they would be able to find Lieutenant General Ling before the military headquarters. That's not necessary. I can resolve my father's issue myself. Ling Lan shook her head and refused. No one could determine what their real intentions were going to be. If a God-class operator, the ultimate weapon of the Federation, the highest-ranking officer of a division, and a general out of only 10 great generals from the Federation, could be so easily plotted against, then who else wouldn't fall into a trap? Even if they were being sincere, how could the Flying Dragon Special Forces do anything to stop that horse that had lost its reins long ago, the 23rd Division? Oh my, Lieutenant General, your answer really makes it difficult for me, said the black-cloaked man with a hint of annoyance in his voice. Did your brigade leader tell you that if I didn't want to go, you would have to force me to go? Ling Lan smiled mockingly. In the end, wasn't it just seeing whose fist was larger? From when she was young, she had known of this fact very well. After entering the military, this fact got even more prominent. If her father wasn't a God-class operator, how could a 40-something-year-old man obtain the rank of a general which only 70 to 80-year-olds could acquire? All in all, he just needed to become so strong that others couldn't neglect his existence. If it wasn't given to him, the military wouldn't be able to face the public. You are quite self-aware. If you don't come with us, then don't blame us for disrespecting you. After all, those from the Flying Dragon Special Forces always put themselves in high regard. Of course, this was because any lieutenant general or above officers who break the law would be taken in by the Flying Dragon Special Forces. In fact, their attitude when facing such high-ranking officers weren't disrespectful at all. Actually, you should have just done that from the very beginning. You talk too much, said Ling Lan as she raised her eyebrows. If it wasn't for the fact that she wanted to get some information out of the man, with her personality, she would have already made a move before they had prepared themselves. Ling Lan knew very well that most antagonists died because they talked too much. Of course, she didn't care if someone else was speaking too much, since they would die according to that hypothesis. You, the black-cloaked man almost spit out a mouthful of blood in response to Ling Lan's blatant disrespect. Wasn't he already being nice to him? Did he not understand that? Go. If Ling Lan didn't respect him, why should he respect Ling Lan? The black-cloaked man turned red with anger as he motioned towards his comrades. He was prepared to take Ling Lan down a notch. In the mind of the black-cloaked man, how could a 20-year-old be able to fight against 4 domain realm masters even if he was a domain realm master himself? Capturing Ling Lan was an easy thing to do for his team. Just like that, 3 other black-cloaked men all pounced towards Ling Lan from 3 different directions. At the same time, they reeled back their arms before swinging them out. As they were swinging their arms, coils of chains began to uncoil themselves from their forearms as they flew towards Ling Lan. They wanted to chain down Ling Lan with a pincer tactic. Ling Lan's eyes glimmered. Her body started to change states, turning into a cloud of white fog before dispersing in a large bang. She had disappeared into the surroundings. The 3 men who attacked didn't panic at her disappearance. They put their hands into their pockets and took out a pendulum similar to the pendulum the first black-cloaked man had taken out. The pendulum began swinging in a circular motion. After it swung around a few times, the crystal-clear pendulum began to gain blood-red hue. The blood hue then started to coagulate towards a certain direction. Southwest, said the 3 of them simultaneously. The chain on their right hands shot out towards the southwest direction. Bang! 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 The 3 chains ruthlessly pierced into the ground, but it was all for naught as they didn't hit anything. The 3 of them didn't let up. The pendulum was still circling around their left hand, and the same thing happened in another direction. They waved the chains once again towards the direction that was shown on the pendulum. Bang! 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 The chains still pierced the ground without hitting anything. However, one of them had a look of joy on his face. I hit something just now. The naked eye couldn't see it, but the feedback he received from the chain couldn't be wrong. The feeling just now was the same as hitting something. This toy is pretty sensitive to the environment-altering domain concepts. Domain realm masters were all unique existence. However, those who were considered to be difficult to deal with were those who could completely conceal themselves within the environment they were in. Unless they randomly hit, they wouldn't show any trace of themselves. Those types of domain realm masters were born to be spies. In order to guard against these types of domain realm masters, each nation had developed different equipment to detect domain concept energies. Like this detection tool the Federation's military headquarters research institute had invented. Caesar also had invented something similar. Although the detectors were essentially doing the same thing, there was still a clear distinction between the good quality and bad quality detectors. In reality, the technology in them hadn't been really perfected. Additionally, the cost of making such a tool was very high. Most of the somewhat capable nations were all trying to get past the problem with cost. Even if such technology was well known in the upper echelons of each nation, the average citizen was still completely unaware of the existence of such detectors. If the people from the Flying Dragon Special Forces hadn't not shown her the detector, Ling Lan probably wouldn't have known that the Federation had already invented a tool that could detect domain concept energies. Realizing that they had hit Ling Lan, the 3 who attacked became even more intense in their search. They paid even more attention to the detector in their hands. Their detectors reacted again. The 3 of them were overjoyed at the reaction and immediately flung out their chains. However, in the following moments, their expression turned grave. It was because the direction they flung their chains towards were all different. Their detectors gave 3 different results, but there was only one opponent, so this meant that their detectors were wrong. Ring! A seemingly silent ringing sound traveled through the air around them. Lines of threads revealed themselves in front of their eyes in the space around them, trapping the 3 of them in the center. They were completely surrounded by these threads. It was as though they fell into a web of spiders with no chance of escaping. Seeing this, the three of them shook their right hand quickly and the chains shattered into countless needles before shooting out towards all sides wildly in an attempt to make space for them. The overwhelming number of golden needles made for a terrifying scene. It gave off the feeling of being swarmed by a ton of hornets. However, in the next second, these flying needles suddenly slowed to a halt before dropping like flies to the floor. The three men grimaced because they could see their needle being encased in ice. By encasing them in ice, it cut their flow domain concept energy to the needles, stopping them from being able to remotely control them. At that moment, Ling Lan slowly appeared in front of them, standing not far from the three men. All of her fingers trembled slightly and 10 crystal-clear threads appeared out of thin air. Impudent! The black-cloaked man sitting on the tree branch shouted angrily when he saw what was about to happen to his comrades. Then he disappeared from the tree. In the blink of an eye, he appeared beside Ling Lan with a lightning bolt in his hand. Right as the lightning bolt was about to hit Ling Lan turned her head and looked at it coldly. Bang! An ice hammer appeared out of thin air and ruthlessly clashed with the lightning bolt. The clash between two domain concept energies instantly caused a deafening explosion. The lightning bolt was instantly broken apart by the ice hammer. After dispersing the lightning bolt, the hammer continued to ruthlessly fly towards the black-cloaked man behind the lightning bolt. The black-cloaked man snorted coldly at the incoming hammer. He clenched his crackling fist and pushed his fist towards the ice hammer. He was confident that his lightning bolt could shatter the ice hammer. Bang! His fist came in contact with the ice hammer. After holding on for 1 to 2 seconds, the black-cloaked man spat out a mouthful of blood before being sent flying backwards. He flew backwards until he hit the trunk of the tree, breaking it in the process. The black-cloaked man slid to the ground before falling unconscious. After a few seconds, the prone body began to twitch. The black-cloaked man slowly regained his consciousness. He slowly pushed his body up and held his forehead in pain. His right hand was trembling uncontrollably. That ice hammer, although it seemed to be small and harmless, the power behind the hammer was still terrifying. The muscles and bones in his right arm were still trembling. Ling Lan gave the black-cloaked man a glance and then no longer paid any attention to him. She focused her attention back to the three men who were inside her spider web. Her expression was calm as she slowly raised her hands. The threads around the three of them suddenly began to move closer towards them. Seeing this, the three men didn't hesitate and chose to transform their bodies into their domain element in order to evade the deathly blow. However, right after their bodies transformed into their elements, they reappeared in their original location with defeated looks on their faces. The threads actually had properties that could block out every element outside of the ice element, and before they knew it, the threads closed in on them, encasing them in cocoons. After Ling Lan slightly shook her fingers, the three of them felt the threads around their bodies begin to tighten. It became tighter and tighter. Their skin was cut open and blood started to pour out. The originally crystal-clear cocoon slowly turned blood red. The three of them realized that if they didn't escape in the next few seconds, they would be cut into mincemeat. Stop, Ling Lan. Are planning on becoming a criminal and betray the Federation, shouted the black-cloaked man after he spat out some blood. Ling Lan turned around towards him with an indifferent yet mocking look on her face. Isn't this the path you want me to choose? If that's the case, I'll just be what you want. After saying that, Ling Lan clenched her fist and the three bloodied cocoons instantly exploded. Countless amounts of blood poured out, staining the ground blood red. Ling Lan, shouted the black-cloaked man angrily. He angrily struck the ground with his fist. His entire body jumped up from the ground and then he ruthlessly rushed towards Ling Lan. Ling Lan killed his three comrades. He definitely needed Ling Lan to pay with his life. Humph. Ling Lan didn't even look and only raised her right hand. She then clenched it towards the black-cloaked man. A ton of ice element particles began materializing around the black-cloaked man. It solidified into an ice coffin, sealing him inside it. The black-cloaked man watched helplessly as he became sealed within the coffin. In the coffin, he could see Ling Lan snapping her fingers. Then he watched as his body and the coffin disintegrate into ice particles, completely disappearing from this world. The last scene he saw was Ling Lan's shadow as she left. That shadow looked determined and indifferent. It was as though killing the four of them was something that wasn't considered to be anything difficult. A person like that either had a clear conscience, or he was completely determined with what he was doing. The black-cloaked man was regretting his decision. He felt that facing such an opponent was a clear mistake. It was just that he had realized the mistake too late, and the price they had to pay for the mistake was their lives. Boss, 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 wake up. Come on, wake up. After dying, he still could actually hear voices. What was happening? Boss, boss, if you continue to sleep like that, we won't be able to finish our mission. This time, he finally heard the voice clearly. It was the voice of the comrades who died with him. Could they have encountered each other in the underworld? However, what was this mission he was speaking of? Boss, if you don't wake up then don't blame me for using force. He didn't know why it sounded so annoyed. Before he could react, he heard a crisp "Fiac," and what followed after was a sharp pain on his left cheek. F***ck, who just hit me? He immediately sprang up while holding his left cheek. To his surprise, he could actually open his eyes in the underworld. What first entered his vision was the guilty faces of his comrades. When he saw them, his eyes turned wide open and his jaws dropped to the floor. He couldn't believe his eyes, so he rubbed his eyes in panic. Boss, what's wrong with you? We kept calling you but you wouldn't wake up. One of his comrades spoke as he surreptitiously put his right hand behind his back. Didn't I just die? The black-cloaked man stuttered in shock. However, after turning his head to check the room he was in, it didn't seem like the underworld. Where were the fires? Where were the demons? Boss, did you have a nightmare? What do you mean about dying? Wait. Suddenly, his normally quiet comrade shouted out loud. His expression was somewhat uncanny as he seemed to have discovered something. Did you notice anything strange with me? The black-cloaked man looked towards his comrades with a serious look. Nothing. We only saw you suddenly falling asleep. We thought it was because you were too tired from maintaining this stakeout. You suddenly falling asleep like that is already strange. The black-cloaked man looked up towards the sunlight seeping through the tree inside. We just lost. We aren't strong enough. What else can we say? His comrades, who now understood what had happened, could only look at each other with a pained smile. Even if they were to go against someone like that head-on, they probably wouldn't be able to get out alive. You know how to write the report when you return, right? Reminded the black-cloaked man. We didn't see anything and we didn't find anything. After all, they were all wizened members of the military, so they immediately knew what their boss meant by his words. Their boss loved to save face. If it was known to other Black Ops teams that they were taken out silently, they would be in a bad spot. He still didn't forget the feeling he had before he died in his dream. He didn't want himself to regret anything before his death, so he decided to not participate in capturing Ling Lan. After rushing out from the district where all the general's manners were, Ling Lan suddenly felt a gaze on her, so she turned around to see where the gaze came from. However, not long after, she frowned, shook her head slightly and left. Although the gaze on her made her feel uneasy and gave her an impulse to go see where it was from, she was still more worried about Li Lanfeng and Luo Lang in the commercial district. She deliberately took in the strongest domain realm master among the four in her profound insights domain to obtain more information about the internal workings of the military headquarters. She learned that the Federation's military headquarters research institute had already developed a tool to detect domain concept energies. There was no doubt that it was going to be a problem for them. She was now most worried that this tool had appeared where Li Lanfeng and Luo Lang had been staying. Once that tool was used in their vicinity, Li Lanfeng and Luo Lang's location would be exposed. At that moment, the direction where the gaze was from had a man in a black windbreaker standing on top of a tall tree. It seems those four aren't enough to stop Ling Lan, said the man in the windbreaker plainly as he watched Ling Lan leave. However, it won't be that easy for him to leave. Right as he was about to go and stop Ling Lan, he suddenly saw his world turning dark. Who is it? Said the man in the black windbreaker cautiously. It has been a long time since we last met. You've gotten much stronger, said a familiar-sounding voice. Immediately after, a silhouette appeared out of thin air and walked towards him. He wore a general's uniform and he had a bright smile on his face. It looked like it should have been a warm smile, but for some reason, it seemed cold and even somewhat demonic. Who are you? The black-cloaked man's fingers tightly clenched his fist. His fingers had even dug into the flesh of his palm. What? You don't even recognize your own superior now? Ling Xiao laughed jokingly. The man didn't respond to his jest. It was as if he was scared of something. Tsang Lang, I know it's you just from your movements. Ling Xiao didn't care whether Tsang Lang responded to him or not and just spoke his mind. Why? After his identity was revealed, Song Lang lifted his hood and showed a slender yet handsome face. Compared to Ling Xiao and Ling Zhao's current body, Ren Feiyu, Song Lang seemed to have had a rough life. Why what? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows. You've let the Flying Dragon Special Forces run free for 20 years. Why did you suddenly give out so many orders in the past few days? Song Lang looked at Ling Xiao suspiciously. And before all that, you went to the Twilight Empire's battlefield. This makes me suspect that General Ling Zhao's death has something to do with you. General Ling Xiao is a general of the Federation and is also the Federation's prodigy. As the chief of the Flying Dragon Special Forces, how could I do anything that would harm him? You are overanalyzing, Ling Xiao replied calmly. Of course, he was saying that now. As for the previous owner of the body, since he died, the dues he owed in the past had been paid already. As for my actions yesterday. Don't you think it's because you did such a poor job until I can't simply turn a blind eye to it? Ling Xiao looked at Song Lang with a half-smile. This Song Lang wasn't a simple character. Although he and Song Lang's relationship was on good terms and that they could be considered friends, the two of them still walked on very different paths. In the past 20 years, they had already slowly drifted apart from each other. It was only because the two of them didn't have any direct disputes that their relationship didn't worsen until they were enemies. Song Lang narrowed his eyes. General Ren, are you preparing to clean house? Yes, but not really. I don't like people who aren't obedient, especially if it's my deputy. Brigade Leader Song Lang. The reason Ling Xiao allowed Song Lang to do as he pleased was because he wanted to use him to inform his daughter of the newly invented detector. He wanted her to be cautious about it. Otherwise, she might be caught off guard by the detector in one of her trips in the Federation. I'm disobedient. Chief Ren, I'm hurt hearing you say such things. Song Lang's face had a look of disdain. It's actually just that I feel without General Ling Xiao, there would be no one to threaten you. With no one there to stop, you don't need to conceal your true intentions anymore. Song Lang, I have to say that you know me very well. If you were to lower your ambitions, perhaps we can be very good partners. Ling Xiao didn't disagree with Song Lang. In reality, he did indeed want political power. The more the better. That way, he would be able to make the three marshals pay for what they have done and be able to finally truly protect his daughter from everything. But, can you tolerate my existence? Song Lang scoffed. Ren Feiyu was a narrow-minded man. In the past few years, Ren Feiyu had tried his best to distance Song Lang from everyone. How could Song Lang not hate him? Why can't I tolerate it? You want the Flying Dragon Special Forces? I'll give it to you, smiled Ling Xiao. Of course, that's only when I become a marshal. The only one. The only marshal. Song Lang's eyes narrowed greatly. He had always known that Ren Feiyu had great ambitions to the extent of being one of the marshals. But, he didn't expect his appetite to be so huge. He didn't want to be one of the three marshals. He wanted to become the only marshal in the Federation.